It's Thursday. It's that time again. Welcome to Brewing Controversy. I'm Lucas. This is my hetero life mate, David. And I want you to know that I am missing Ant-Man in order to do this show with your ass because I wanted to see Ant-Man on Thursday as early as I could, which would have been 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I was working, which would have been like any other time, but it would have run into this show. And then the only one that I would be able to make would be right immediately after the show, but there's snow, and so I can't haul ass out of here and go to the theater, and so I can't see Ant-Man until tomorrow, and my sacrifices must be recognized. So in order to recognize my sacrifice, I've poured a tiny little Ant-Man beer, and I'm going to drink my little Ant-Man beer.
Oh, God. Have you seen all the commercials for the Heineken 0.0?
I am terrified of the sequence of words that just came out of your mouth.
Right. So Heineken got a promotional deal with Marvel.
I know that.
And I keep on seeing these commercials where Ant-Man's like, he's grabbing a beer before the mission, but and like, Anthony is like the ant is like, no, that's bad. And he's like, don't worry, it's not alcoholic.
Oh no, I haven't seen that. There's a Super Bowl ad where the ants carry off a Heineken or something.
Yeah, it's their new alcohol-free. I want to make something very clear about this whole, because Guinness is releasing their hot in demand Guinness Zero for St. Patrick's Day. Yeah.
Why? Are these 0 calorie?
No, these are zero alcohol.
Zero. Oh. Like Heineken. Okay, I can understand Heineken. Guinness? No. There's no. We can't be doing The dark beers must be held sacrosanct.
It's Guinness, so I mean, it's mass-produced shit to begin with. I'm trying to teach my patrons that stouts should not taste like this.
Oh God. Anyway, if you're here, say hi. Brian's here. Kelly's here. Feel free to chime in and say hello. Feel free to participate, ask questions, leave cranky comments, tell one or both of us that we're full of shit. Whichever floats your boat. Oh boy. Anyway, so my fake rage about Ant-Man aside, I do plan to see that tomorrow. I don't have anything. I don't have a axe to grind with the non-alcoholic trend. I just think that there's a space where you just don't get to have that. Take regular old, translucent beer and do all the non-alky you want, but we can't be going down a road of trying to get all of the vast array of beautiful beer in the world to get into the box of the zero alcohol.
It's a fad. It's a marketing ploy. It's this. The thing is, they're like, well, young people are drinking. They're looking at data where they think that young people are drinking significantly less, and that's true in some demographics. It's not true in a lot of demographics.
Well, that's a fair statement.
A consequence
both ways.
Yeah, it's the problem is that it's a shifting demographic trend. I know plenty of younger people who drink like fish, and I know and what they're looking at that's concerning to them is that higher income 20-somethings are not drinking like they used to. It used to be that those were the people you could reliably depend on to be utter sots, right? Day in, day out, completely blitzed because they have no concern for having to get to work on time or whether or not they show up to work drunk or hungover. Mommy and daddy are going to take care of it. That demographic is showing a decline in binge drinking. The rest and everyone else is showing a market decline in daily drinking, right? So, like, for instance, I come on the show and I have like 5 or 6 beers, right? But I'm not going to have a beer probably tomorrow or Saturday
Right.
or Sunday, right? And so they're looking at that and they're freaking out and they're saying, okay, we need to find something new for them to buy
Well, that's part of it, but
because they think it's the booze that's the problem.
there is a trend, there is a fad, but it's also a very marketable space in the general category of non-alcoholic beverages that are not like sodas, kids stuff, soda pop, etc., whatever. Um, there is an interesting space for that. I think there's a viable position for that in the market. I don't know how long that lasts. I don't know if it becomes a permanent, segment or whatever. I think there's a lot of floundering and experimentation in the business, but I welcome that space if it's a real space, just as much as like anything else, right? You had soda drinkers, and then along came diet, and there's a certain market that just holds out on diet. So
Well, I mean, but
eh,
that's
maybe, but
here's the thing.
some beers just don't need to be fucked with.
I say this as someone who enjoys the taste of beer, but part of what makes me enjoy the taste of beer is my brain associates a payoff with drinking the slightly sour stuff, the slightly bitter sour stuff, which is, hey, you're going to get buzzed off this. It'll be fun. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and so, especially drinking something like Heineken or Guinness or some of these light, like all these light non-alcoholic beers,
right.
literally there's not even taste here, and and that's what actually makes it easier to pull the alcohol out. Like this calf killer that I'm drinking right now, you can taste the alcohol, and that's part of
Mm,
what gives it its flavor, right?
yeah, yeah.
um so I mean, they're doing this to bad beers. They're doing this to no, and I don't mean that these are
Nothing of value was lost, David.
well, I mean, pretty much, but I mean, it's they're trying to expand it to this, this craze, and they're at bars. They're trying to get us to be like, oh, uh, at no point would I ever want to go to a bar and be like, unless I'm feeling ill or I have something very important to do later or very early in the morning. At no point would it ever occur to me to go to a bar, which is explicitly a place where they serve intoxicants. I could go to all sorts of other places where they do not serve intoxicants, but
Right.
I'm here at a bar because you serve intoxicants, and I'm here
Well,
to drink them.
you're thinking of it as a lone individual. There are plenty of situations where social groups are together and there's a non-drinker and they can.
That's even more of a reason to have more alcohol.
Well, now you're just being unaccepting, and your generation is supposed to accept
I've
everybody.
got to drink for
From
both of us at that point.
millennials on down, everything goes. And there's a big old tent, and everybody's welcome, so you don't get to complain about the
No, no,
teetotaler.
no, no, no. Here's the thing: the non-drinker is more than welcome. He just needs to understand that I'm going to be drinking for both of us because that server deserves,
Well,
deserves their tip out.
speaking of drinking, let's get the happy hour going. So, for those that have not seen us do this, we take a few topics that are a little bit less of the big stuff, and of course, we try to pick our big story, big topic well in advance. Even if we don't actually publish the show, we kind of sit on it just in case something blows up in our face because that's the conditioning that we've all had in the last 5 years or so.
Yep.
So basically, the big topics stay solid, but we pull in some stuff that we might have heard about or decided to put in to our hot take happy hour. Easy for me to say.
Yeah.
And today,
Lucas is not drunk yet. I just want to clarify that for everyone.
right? The little itty bitty Ant Man beer. Today we have a couple of humdingers. The first being that, of course, here in my neck of the woods, we've notched the latest ridiculous, unacceptable event of impotent gun-bearing rage. And David, you had a few things to say about that because I mean, other than hey, it wasn't anywhere near me, don't worry about me. I haven't had much to say because I've run out of shit to say about this topic at this point.
I felt like there's not a whole lot to say about this, honestly. I mean, it's, at this point, mass shootings are America's Valentine to itself. It's how
Mhm.
much we love guns.
Yeah.
damn the casualties. This is our level of love for weapons of mass murder.
Right.
We're not. I mean, and it's
And
very
this
clear Republicans are
clown,
not going to do anything about it.
this
And
clown
you
had
know,
two legally purchased guns, apparently. Um, and now we have the conversation going. Now in our state,
well,
there's a little bit better possibility because we do have the trifecta. The trifecta we haven't had in 40 years. We have Democrats in all three spaces to get law to happen. But we also have
but
the
it'll go
drawback.
before the federal bench and it'll be beaten up.
Well, there's that, but there's also the fact that the Michigan State Constitution apparently goes further into more specifics about rights to have guns. So it actually makes it more clear and more stated that there are various gun rights, which makes it a higher obstacle to clear. So there's a
Well, and
lot.
I also want to point out that not only did we have this mass shooting at Michigan State, the Buffalo shooter got sentenced this week.
Mhm.
And it's we keep on doing this again and 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 again.
Sometimes a couple times a day, statistically,
Yeah,
so
I mean
far this year.
it's gotten this has reached a point of absolute insanity. There is no reason why we need to have this many guns in the hands of this many people, especially high capacity weapons. I'm sorry. And again, I'll give my traditional speech that I give every single time on this. You know, if you feel the need to have a high capacity weapon, I want to know when you are going to muster on the village green to I mean, it says very clearly a well-regulated militia. What is a Are you a member? Are you a regulated member of the militia? Do you know how to march in formation and accept orders from your commanding officer? If
Oh,
no,
uh, a
ah,
good a good deal of these shitheels have no capability whatsoever to respect an authority that comes from government, which leads us to your next topic that you've given us for the happy hour, sir. Oh my God. Ah, like we all knew it was true. We all knew, but now we know. Do
yeah.
tell.
So apparently it has been revealed. Let me bring up the specific article here. There it is. So a metropolitan officer in the DC Police Department uh, was in regular contact all the way through the 6th with Torino, the head of the Proud Boys,
January.
and apparently was passing information to the Proud Boys about what was going on.
Oh,
Um,
wait. Hold on. Wait. There. Had
right?
to give a shocked face for
You know,
theatrical value
one
because,
of the
no one thought this was definitely for sure happening.
I mean, one of the things that got reported about the lead up to January 6th was that there were a number of FBI agents who were apparently confused about why people were paying attention to this thing. They're like, well, it's no different than Black Lives Matter. It's way different, right? It's way different. You're trying to
Uh,
overthrow an election. We've known for a long time that white supremacists and were grooming people into law enforcement
mhm.
and were maintaining regular contact with people in law enforcement. Portland PD became rather notorious during the Black Lives Matter movement for seemingly to openly favor white supremacist protest groups over anti-fascist and Black Lives Matter groups that were present. And the thing is, white supremacists said in the late 80s that that's what they were going to do. They were going to cultivate people, put them in the police force, and that's how they were going to launch uh, a an event that they have in their minds. They don't use this word openly as much, but they were definitely in the 80s and 90s. RAHOA, which is a contraction for racial holy war.
Mhm.
I mean, if you ever hear someone talking about RAHOA, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about racial holy war. And they said that that's what they were going to do. They were going to use their control of local police departments to bring about RAHOA. Now, these are not the smartest, most organized people. So trying to keep all that together in some sort of functional cabal obviously was not going to last longer than, a hummingbird fart. But it,
Yeah.
it
3
still
people
has
can keep a secret.
influenced.
Dot, dot, dot.
Well, I mean, it's not even about keeping a secret. It's about keeping people on page. All right. So what you need to do on January 6th is you need
Oh,
to be in this place,
yeah.
ready with your squad to help. I mean, it
And
doesn't
then
work that way.
maintaining any control over the assorted Leroy Jenkins factors that they would be dealing with.
Oh yeah. I mean that's one of the
I
things.
mean,
And I've told this story before, but I'm going to mention it again. Um, there's a YouTube channel that I like to watch on a regular basis when they put out new content called Alternate History Hub.
mhm.
And normally it's this one guy who's very even keel, but he has this of the collection of other people who are allowed to post this channel. There's this other guy named Monsieur Z, who is rather notorious for being a right wing nut. Uh, but one of the things that he mentioned on the day of January 6th was how disappointed he was in realizing that the conservative revolution could never happen. And the
Oh,
reason he said
right.
it could never happen was this: is he looked at how organized the left and Democrats were with regards to Black Lives Matter, with regards to civil rights marches, with regards to millions upon millions upon millions of people marching, and relatively very little violence compared to the number of people who are marching, and very strong coordination among groups.
Right.
He's like, I watched the January 6th riot happen and no one was in control. There was no leadership. There was no organization. It was just people throwing themselves at doors and doing nothing.
Throwing themselves at
Um,
doors. I love it because it's so accurate. It's really a great description of what happened. Um, yeah, I look a lot of times at these jackoffs that call themselves patriots, and I kind of laugh about the fact that if any of these fucking idiots had been relied upon for the American Revolution, we'd all be still mourning a queen right now.
yeah,
These
it's
these
these are not. I
fools
mean that.
call themselves patriots in the line of the forefathers, and they lack any understanding that comparatively they're a wart on the
Yeah,
ass of success.
I my favorite quote whenever one of them whenever I hear one of them say that, I'm like, so which colony did your ancestors land in? I can tell you mine.
Mm, mm, mhm.
Well,
There's
that's
that.
right. My family's been here since before the revolution. When did yours get off the boat?
They don't know.
Thank
Uh,
you. Mhm.
well, speaking of those sorts, there's been a lot going on here in Michigan in Ottawa County. Some weeks ago, people may remember the news about this extreme right wing Trumpy group called Ottawa Impact that organized themselves to make sure they won enough elections to take over the county commission. And then they did a whole bunch of shit out of the blue that no one saw coming, including appointing John fucking Gibbs as their new administrator, manager, whatever the fuck that job is. All of
Oh, it's
this
my
in
turn.
their
It's my
first
turn.
meeting with no notice. Yeah, right. Much for your shocked faces. Um, I mean, it's not weird that they would do the things they did and install a stooge jackass like that, but it is a little bit like on the nose that it's him. Like there were just so many
Oh, it had to
options.
be
And
him.
him,
It
you
had to
know.
be him because the thing is in uh conservative politics right now, it's never uh that the messenger was wrong or that I mean one of the things in the 90s, right, that I would get mad at Democrats about even though I was technically working for the Republicans, I'd get mad at Democrats because it was never the message was wrong, just the messenger, right? And so they'd fire the messenger, and then keep the message the same.
Hmm.
Republicans always, were the ones saying, well, maybe the message is wrong, and then
Right.
rerunning the same guy with a different message. Um, Now in modern conservative politics, it is very much the messenger cannot be wrong. The message cannot be wrong. We were somehow cheated.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that all the other avenues have dried up. So today there was a press conference Q&A thing with Attorney General Nessel, and she essentially explained in long form how the investigation that her office had launched into all of this shit doesn't render anything illegal. Essentially, these assholes managed to figure out a way to do things that tiptoed all the way up to the line of illegality without actually breaking any laws.
I like to
And
call that the Clinton method.
yeah, and she kind of outlined the fact that like none of this was ethical or honest necessarily, but there's nothing that we can actually do. And there is some discussion of some Open Meetings Act reforms that she outlined that could fix some of this, which would be two things: require a public body to include an agenda for a public meeting at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting, and limit the ability to modify that agenda during the meeting, except in exigent circumstances. Now, I'm shocked that doesn't exist. It's exceptionally uh, no-brainer kind of stuff to me,
Well,
but
I
it
mean,
does
it's.
explain some things I've seen.
I'm not gonna lie. That's a sword that cuts both ways. A lot of instances in Florida have seen situations in which, uh, under DeSantis, left leaning or Democratic members of city councils and county commissions have been uh, prosecuted for for relatively minor what I think most of us would consider relatively minor violations of that those rules, those transparency rules of, oh, you talk to another council member
Yeah, right.
outside of chambers, that's we're prosecuting you. Oh, you're in one instance in the villages, a case that's happening right now in the villages or has been happening. I think it's concluded now. Guy went to prison for 2 years because his wife reached out to another council member for support for her no-kill shelter, not through the council for monetary. Like, hey, do you want to donate to our no-kill shelter?
Yeah. Well, the other suggestion was defining the term public official to include a person who has been elected to public office but has not yet taken his or her oath of office or otherwise began their term. Now, this comes from the point that all of these shit stains got together after they won their election,
That's generous.
and they yeah, they helped each other come up with ideas for what to do and sort of pre-planned their little um, parliamentary coup in advance of any of their actual oath of office taking or meeting convening. And so the question being, you know, how to curtail that kind of concept, because it is a little bit sidestepping the role that they're supposed to have. Once they're sworn in, they're beholden not to meet together behind closed doors and lacking of quorum, et cetera, et cetera. But in between, they can just sit around and fucking talk about whatever they want. And I don't know uh, how that really can be enforced, but it's not a
I
terrible
mean,
idea.
and that's not entirely true,
And
Brian. It's
Brian,
not.
you're kind of right, but that's the whole point of this discussion of writing
Yeah,
this
I mean,
down more solidly
that's
in
also not
law.
entirely true. Like the thing is, it's assumed that you're being honest when you're taking the oath, and the court has consistently found that if you were doing things which violated that oath ahead of time, and then all of a sudden you're going to change your mind and change your ways suddenly, and then now you're going to uphold this oath, the court has sometimes been looked pretty askance at that, being like, ah, dude.
Well, lastly, David, tell us about the cake. I'm going to work on pouring my beer because beer's coming up and it's
Yeah,
time.
I'm gonna try and kill. I hate to do this to Calf Killer, but I need to move on to my main beer because I promised the guys at Reds that I would do this beer tonight. Um, but so Wall Street Journal published an editorial, and it so tone deaf, so shocking. I know, right? We're just full of really you don't say. Tonight, the Wall Street Journal is tone deaf on matters of economic solvency. Shocking. That's our catchphrase for tonight. Apparently,
Yeah.
is yes,
Is
Olivia,
this the
it is
skipping
the skipping
breakfast one?
breakfast one.
Why,
Um,
yes. Yes, it is. It sure is.
um, so for those of you who haven't read this editorial, it basically says, well, times are tough. Uh, so if you are having trouble making ends meet, uh, you should just skip a meal.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy,
Well,
it's hard to know where to start on that.
I'm trying. Like my brain is still sitting there trying to process, being like, holy shit, we're to that point of the collapse of capitalism that we're just like, oh, we're just going to start telling people that they need to skip meals
Mhm.
because they can't afford to eat anymore because we've completely destroyed the economy.
Yeah. My first thought when I saw that was the fantasy of being face to face with someone that you could just scream at for 3 minutes uninterrupted. And in this case, that screaming rant would include, really, okay, yeah, skip a meal. So which meal would you propose is skipped? Which of the two meals that a lot of disadvantaged kids are already skipping because the only time they get food is at school would you like them to additionally fucking skip, sir or ma'am or whatever
Um,
fucking breed of twat wrote that shit? But you like people already do this. They already do it to get
and
by.
Brian, that's why I named it. Like that's why I said they were never going to give anyone cake. Uh,
Right.
it's but I mean this has reached a point of absurdity, really, and we need to really talk about the fact that we are staring the collapse of American capitalism. Before it was kind of hyperbole. I would argue even after '08, because there were a lot of things that could have been done after '08 to prop up American capitalism to make it work. Right. The problem is that it's like the investor who wrote an open letter criticizing Google, a major Google investor who wrote an open letter criticizing Google for not firing enough people. um it's we've reached a point where these people are, it's no longer about sanity, and it's what I've been saying for years. It is these people have reached a point of absurdity in their mindset. The investor class has reached a point of absurdity that it's no longer bounded by reality.
Right. There's
There
such
was
a
an
disconnect and
article not
such
too
an
long ago.
insulation.
Yeah. Well, there was an article not too long ago, and it was a professor of sociology, and he said, I'm bound by an NDA, so I can't tell you who was in the room, but a group of wealthy individuals sat him down, and they were apparently like, well, we're polling um, experts in sociology and economics to try and figure out how we can ride out the end of civilization
Mm,
because
mhm.
we think it's coming, because we're going to make it happen.
Right.
Um, by through our unfettered greed, we understand that we're going to get to that point, right? But we and then having the apparently slightly deflationary moment in their conversation of everyone apparently telling them repeatedly, um, the people who you think are going to protect you aren't. They will kill you. And apparently, and again, like this is some sort of very fucked up game.
Mhm.
Them just walking away, apparently walking away from these meetings, just resigned, being like, oh well, I guess me, the wife and kids will just have to hang or get shot or eaten by the cannibals.
Yeah,
Oh well.
we'll take our chances.
Any change in behavior? No, no,
Yeah.
no, no.
Uh,
It's just that these people have lost their minds, and we are realistically, uh, 12 years on from '08, realistically now facing the fact that we are almost to
15
a
years.
feudalistic economy at this point. We're
15 years on.
15 years on. We have devolved almost to a point of a feudalistic economy with a few individuals acting as lords and
Yep.
taking surplus labor from the rest of us. And some people are like, oh, that's a Marxist term. Here's the problem that I always have. I am not a Marxist. I am a social democrat. That means I believe that markets should work, that markets need rules, however, to prevent people like the people who are currently running the markets from doing so, right? To keep things on an even keel so that nothing does what it's doing right now, which is hurtling towards a massive breakdown. Um, so, I mean, but Marx was the catch is Karl Marx, when he described his theory of surplus labor, was right. And one of the things that happens, and one of the things that's happening right now, why is democracy under so much threat? Uh, is when you have a system in which uh, one of the essential elements of democracy, which is I have some control over the means of production, is completely stripped, then democracy itself is under threat. And Marx understood that. Now, did Marx, in my opinion, it was Marx kind of a moonbat being like, oh, the proletariat will rise up and it'll be a utopia. Yes, I think Marx was a little bit on Princess Stardust level. But his economic formulas were correct, and they've consistently been proven correct. And so the problem is that we're facing right now in America is that you have corporations which have gotten so greedy that they are willing to actively destroy the livelihood and functioning of our entire economy, of our society, of everything, in the interest of basically they want to end the game with the highest score.
Mm. Yeah.
That's where we
Better
are, which
better to
leads
be
us.
hung in the gallows that was made from the scraps of the street as a rich person than to compromise, or not even rich. Rich is just an outdated term at this point. Um, Wealthy is an outdated term. We are so far beyond either of those descriptors for most people.
We have people funding their own space agencies at this point. We have moved beyond
It's
rich and wealthy as terms.
massively advanced cash hoarding. It's really interesting. Well, let's drink some beer because we're gonna get right back to talking about greedy motherfuckers after we talk about what you drinking.
You go first because I'm still trying to kill the loss of this
I
caffeine.
will, because I get to marry mine to personal news as well. So I cracked open another one of my bottles I brought back from Atlanta. I'm doing the been there, done that. Got the T-shirt routine for Monday Night Brewing today. This all came uh, really to a complete theme when I just pulled a shirt out of the pile to put on today, and it was the Monday night shirt that seemed appealing. Um, and then I thought, oh, I've got Monday Night Beer. That's the beer I'm going to talk about. But then when I looked at the beers I had, I realized that I had another bottle of one of the breeds of Tears of My Enemies. So this is the Scotch barrel aged double Imperial double milk stout. Um, Vanilla, coffee, and cocoa nibs is the third tiny line of text in that descriptor. There's a lot going on in this beer. And that's one of the things I really like about Monday night. But the other cool thing this ties into, and the reason I chose this particular Monday night is because last night I was voted onto the board of my neighborhood organization. Now, it's
God help
just,
Grand Rapids. God
it's
help.
just giving back. It really is part of my. I joke around about
Is that
having to
what we're
give
calling
back to
that
doing.
now?
Do what?
So is that what we're calling that now? So
Yes.
not an arrestable offense apparently now. Okay, just checking.
So the way things work here is that a lot of things that would otherwise be the job of an elected city leader are outsourced to different places. The Grand Rapids government's not particularly uh, good at doing all the things that you thought they would be doing. The way it's built is a little differently. Now, we'll get into this later with the topic that we're going to talk about after we talk about the enormous stacks of corporate and American greed. We're going to talk about how much I have recently learned some of these people in this city get paid. So, there's a connection here because they're paid extremely well, but they do less than other places, like, say, Nashville. Um,
Where they
so
get
we'll
paid
get into that.
crap.
But
Because there's 1,000 of
the neat
them.
thing is that you can get involved in your officially your officially sanctioned neighborhood organization,
No, officer, that wasn't a Freudian slip at all. I don't know, not at all.
and you can take part in the process of things that normally were reserved when I lived in Nashville were reserved for the city councilman. So in Nashville, if there's going to be a development in your neighborhood, your city council person organizes a public meeting so that you can discuss that property and the plans and ask questions. And then they move along through the process of that happening in the city. That's not how it works here. That role is outsourced to the neighborhood organization. So if you're on the board of your neighborhood organization, you get the chance to take the first pass at a whole lot of stuff that gets run by the citizenry, and you can get plugged into a lot more of what's going on and make an impact on a lot of positive stuff. So I'm really genuinely excited about it. It was not a difficult process. There were 12 candidates for 15 roles. It's not like we weren't all going to get there, but technically, I just won my first public election yesterday. So um, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I have met a lot of people that I think very highly of through this organization. I will may not ever know if John O'Connor voted for me or not, but he was there.
Ah,
And we had a great time. I
I don't know. I
introduced.
don't know how I feel about that method.
Um, we'll go into sometime a little bit more about some of the things that lead to some of the things. You won't like any of it. Tonight, when you're getting progressively drunker and sending me more and more nonsensical text random feedback, go Google the 1911 furniture strike of Grand Rapids, and you can start from there.
Uh-oh.
Uh, so
He's giving me a research project. This is going to be fun.
back to beer. Tears of My Enemies in the ironic glory of choosing it by name. First of all, you can say this is one of those, like, sometimes there's a beer that I already know is just beautiful, and I definitely bring the I guess this is more of a mug than a stein, but the
It's a
giant
Stein. We'll
ass
call it a
beer
Stein.
glass, because this is a large.
I call mine a Stein.
This is a large baby. Well, that's true. Yeah, this thing is a pint, and yeah. So there is nothing more scrumptious than the misfortune of your enemies. This variant was aged in non-peated Scotch barrels with locally roasted Batdorf and Bronson coffee, locally being Atlanta for these folks. Um, this beer is roasty, chocolatey, and like the tears of your enemies, the most delicious thing you've ever tasted. I really like the ballsiness. I love ballsy brand copy. It's one of my specialty areas. So I love that description. Anyway, I didn't really get much of a taste of this when I drank my little Ant-Man gag beer earlier. I just let it ride and didn't really think about it. So we're going to get in on this and talk about it. So the first thing that I find is there's definitely the Scotch character. I drink a lot of bourbon barrel aged stuff. Everybody knows that that's one of my sweet spots, my soft spot for that particular breed. And you could line this up next to the bourbon barrel options and definitely tell the difference with the Scotch barrel.
Mm.
I don't know that the chocolate is as pronounced, but I don't know that that's a bad thing. There's a lot of vanilla coffee going on. It's also smooth as fuck, and it's wonderful in that way. And it's
Yeah.
pretty thick. You can, I mean, it's got a syrupy quality. It's not like pour it on waffles thick, but it's not your standard issue cheap thin light beer.
No.
So it definitely
And
rides.
I gotta say, I imagine that the use of Scotch, because one of the things that when you're making bourbon is you're typically using corn as your base to make that bourbon, and Scotch you're typically using wheat to make
Yeah,
that Scotch. You're using grains to make the Scotch, and the Scotch picks up notes mostly from the casking process of it. So I mean, and Scotch as opposed to bourbon, most Scotches, when you're talking about Scotch, you're talking about leather, tobacco, and peat notes. And
yeah.
personally, I like tobacco note. I don't mind. Peat note is a little harsh for me.
Well, and I don't know enough to understand unpeat or non-peated Scotch barrel as a term. I could do
Sometimes
some googling.
to add more peat flavor to a Scotch, they will actually sit the barrel in peat.
Oh, well, there you go.
And for those who don't know what peat is a type of earth which is found very often in Scotland and Ireland, which is basically it's a pre it's almost like pre-oil is what you could kind of compare, like to give you an idea of what it is. It's extremely fertile, but it's uh, soil that has had plants live and die and live and die and live and die and live and die and live and die. But the lack of oxygen has caused them to uh, age in such a way that they have not they don't decay all the way, and it creates this really dense, super dense earth.
Well, and they
And
uh, they smoke them with that the peat smoke basically. So this would be a non-smoked barrel essentially to
yeah, I mean
dumb
it's
down the term.
um,
Which actually
I mean
that's a distinct difference. Actually, when you really think about it,
yeah.
that is a distinct. It's not missing. It's not a lacking, but it's distinctly not there in this flavor
Well,
profile. One thing I've
personally,
noticed, I don't have you noticed with Monday Night's darker beers a lack of nose? Because I really nothing comes off like
yeah,
right here. Nothing happens. I mean,
no,
you come in a little bit uh, uninitiated. It almost keeps you from having a bias. You just get the flavor only, and that's kind of neat.
yeah, and I think most of them it is a distinct. In fact, does this have a? Yeah, this is good. This got nose. Uh, it depends on. I feel like it depends on how long you rested the beer, how long you racked the beer. I feel like the less time you use to rack it, the more of a nose you're going to get. The more time you rack it, the less of a nose you're going to
Yeah,
get. And I
that
think
makes sense.
I think with the entire Tears of My Enemies series, I think they rack those for a long time. Another thing that they've designed that beer to do is to rest in the bottle for a very long time.
Yeah,
Uh, which most. Here's the thing: Tears of My Enemies, they don't make a ton of it, but you can still find bottles of Tears of My Enemies that are 3, 4, 5 years old,
yep, yep.
uh,
And this is the
and a lot of places.
2021. So it already had a little age on it, and then I picked it up in the beginning of September last year. So I've been sitting on it for what 3 months or 6 months.
Yeah,
So yeah, and to wrap this thing up, it's a 9.3, so it's coming in with a little bit of balls, but it's not going to be a ass knocking kind of thing. It's highly rated, 4.21, several hundred ratings, pretty good consistent reaction there. They call this vintage number 2 if you're trying to find it anywhere. They're either you're looking for 2021 or vintage number 2. That's how you would narrow this one down. And it's honestly one of my favorites. I obviously gravitate toward this sort of thing. We all know this. Um, give Lucas a
Or if you're
desserty
watching for the first
barrel
time, you
aged.
don't, which is Lucas has a barrel aged addiction.
Yeah, that's not a totally unfair statement. Anyway, David, what are you drinking, bud?
So this is also barrel aged. This, however, is a little bit more. A lot of other things are happening with this. So this is a barrel aged wheat wine from Boulevard Brewing, and it's a collab with Firestone Walker Brewing Company, which I have absolutely no clue whatsoever who the hell these people are. Lucas may do some research here because
Yeah,
he
I'll do
can
that.
reach his keyboard without having to look like this. Uh, but I'm a little pleased with this idea because Boulevard used to make some really amazing high gravity beers. 6 Cents, Cadillac. They used to make some really amazing high grav beers, and then they got bought out, and their high grav line went away. Oh, Doctor Strange, that was a great one. Well before the Marvel series, long time ago,
Yep.
they used to make a Doctor Strange high grav beer.
So Boulevard is Kansas City, Missouri. Firestone Walker is Paso Robles, California, or Robles, Paso Robles, California, um, Venice as well. So yeah, it's kind of a Western Ho collaboration, right? Like a west of the Mississippi sort of crossover there. Um, I'm not going to dive in.
But
Boulevard was acquired by Duvel Mortgat, so they're technically a Belgian
yeah,
subsidiary of a Belgian beer.
but I mean, they long ago stopped this line of really amazing high grav beers. This feels like a slight return to that. It feels like at several places they're trying to return to that tradition. Now, when they were doing their high grav Belgian style, modifications, those were cool. I cannot say this enough. Those were all really really cool. Um, their draft stuff in keg was not something I would touch with a 12-foot pole. But their bottled stuff was cool.
I have to interrupt you for a second to explain the comedy of watching a person on a motorized bicycle, not a motorcycle, but one of those, you know, motorized bicycle, single stroke, kind of loud and obnoxious, but does the
Yeah.
job. Um, slowing down to turn with a snowplow on their ass. So there may be some yellow snow in the middle of our street because I think if I were on that tiny contraption in the snow and the snowplow was coming behind me, I might piss myself. I just caught that when I looked over here, and oh boy. Anyway, it sounds interesting. I don't know if it sounds like I would look at it on a menu and go, "Ooh, that must be good."
So wheat wines have been something that I've seen some other brewers, like when I was in Orlando, when I was at Tactical Brewing, they were playing around with wheat wines. This is one of those new sort of like, yes, David's going to have the esoteric fucking beer.
Of
Uh,
course.
this is one of those new one of the styles that small local breweries are starting to play around with a lot more. Now, this is not to Tactical Brewing's like level of we're going to run it through a silver colloid solution and do like just insanity to it and all that. This feels like a return to that those older style older styles that Boulevard was playing with about 10 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, It's got a Belgian-y taste to it.
It
It's
kind of
definitely
looks like it
sharp.
would too, from the photos I've
Yeah,
seen. And
yeah.
then
It's got a sharpness that I wouldn't necessarily expect. But it does have in a more traditional Belgian style. It does have the banana and citrus combo
mm,
that's happening. Very prevalent. It gives you a big. It gives you a big kind of like that sour earthy banana note, and then it moves very quickly into a very sharp citrus note on
well,
this one.
they
It do-
describe it as a wheat wine blended and fermented with white grapes from Paso Robles, and a wheat wine fermented with, gonna really fuck this word up, Vaic yeast. It has a K at the beginning with an immediate V, so I have to assume that the K
Go
is
for it.
just
I mean,
silent.
it's,
Well, that's
it's,
what Vaic,
it's
maybe.
I know what you're describing, and it's Polish, and no, I would not attempt to say the name.
Yeah, I should
Um,
run and get a neighbor. In Kansas City, each beer was barrel aged in a mix of whiskey and rye barrels, and finally blended together, producing a dry, light bodied barrel aged wheat wine. What's interesting to me is it's not like really really dark. Like most of the photos that I see of people submitting them to Untapped, it's like a scarlet brown ish. But
yeah.
in your particular environment, it does look pretty brown. What's interesting to me is that it is so dark based on that description. So it really picked
Well,
up a lot out of the barrels.
yeah. No, and the thing is, I can taste the grapes, but again, when I'm putting it in and I guess when I'm putting it in a traditional beer tasting sense, I that great taste in my mind becomes banana-y, and
Hmm.
especially when you mix it with that citrus, right? So I still feel comfortable. Although I will say this, the aftertaste does have that white wine kind of like a Riesling
Mhm.
flavor to it as it sits on the back of my tongue. It isn't as fermented as I think I might like if we were doing something more Belgian-y. It isn't as fermented as I would expect. Like I don't have any bubble. I don't have any bubbles still. I've got no
Yeah,
movement. I've still got a little bit of. You can see I've still got a little bit of head on there,
right.
right? But once I poured it, it really gave up the ghost uh,
That's kind of the
on
same over
this
here, though. I
on the
think
se-
that tends to come with these barrel aged varieties. I mean, I don't really think of them as bubbly or having a lot of effervescence to it.
Well, I mean, the reason I feel like it should feel like it should have more effervescence is because it's it has a flavor profile that I'd very much closely track with like a Vestmal or
Mm,
a Semi Klaus, right?
mm,
Now, then again, Semi Klaus is also notorious for not having very big carbonation. Semi
yeah.
Klaus, you pour it and then it goes very, very flat.
Mm, mhm.
Um, so I gotta say, I like it. Um, this is definitely a sit and sip beer. It's got a lot of big flavors.
Definitely seems like
A
it's a
lot of
beer
big fruit
nerd kind of
flavors.
thing. We both, and in a large context of this show, we tend to do a lot of beer nerdy drinking just for the sake of exploring the space. You do more of it. Um, but this one definitely seems like it fits in that category of um, most average people aren't going to pick this up and just say, "Woo, boy, howdy, this is great." They're like,
No, I mean
this is
this is
a
definitely
drink for contemplating and talking."
yeah. This it has a lot of really. It's almost the more I drink it, it's almost a sour
Hmm,
with this big punishing citrus note at the end before it dissolves into that sort of Riesling flavor. It's almost I'd almost call it a sour, which I promised Reds I would do this beer tonight. But I have the world winner sour in my fridge, the World Cup winner, uh, that I keep on trying to be like, I'm going to drink that on the show. And then I never do. So it's sitting there. It's ready to go. But I mean, uh, it's a very approachable beer for someone who wants to expand their horizons, which again, it's one of the things that Boulevard does very well.
Yeah.
Boulevard makes, at least in terms of their high grav situation, makes very approachable beers. Their
Well, it comes
draft
in at a
beer,
9.9, so it's holding its own and not gonna, be a
yeah, they
total
let the
spam.
yeast do its job. And for those of you
Yes.
who've never watched the show, that is again one of my mantras: let the yeast do its job.
Um, it's got a 3.96 with a whole hell of a lot of ratings, so there's a lot of honesty behind that
Well, I
number.
mean, it's Boulevard. They have a wide distro network, but I mean,
Right.
again, like this is definitely a beer. I will say this, for it being barrel aged, the only thing I can think of is
Doesn't
that
come
it took
across.
away some of the big fruit flavors.
Hmm.
Is that the barrel aging on this uh, may have tamped down. That's the only thing I can see where it would have, because I think if they hadn't barrel aged it, and it has these big fruit flavors already, I think it would have truly been like some sort of high grav sour, and I think that people would have been like, I'm gonna need some water after this.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Or as a chaser. Well, we got to
Right.
shift gears real quick before we get out of this segment because Brian always brings us a little note of what his particular flavor of the evening is. So tonight, it's Sunset Sherbet. It's an indica that comes in at 26.8% THC, which is a pretty good percentage for a tight little not too dusty buds. It's not terribly aromatic, but it is quite effective. It pairs well with cheesecake, French onion soup, and forgetting where you placed the afternoon. I am going to have to go back and find every one of these and put a collection list together of Brian's weed reviews. We celebrate the end of prohibition and the lack of forbidding people their vices. So we always give Brian his spot if he's got some input to share. And it's funny. Last night at that meeting of the neighborhood organization, I sat and talked with the community outreach director of one of the cannabis retailers here in town. Their store is in our neighborhood. They are a sponsor of our neighborhood organization. And we had this great in-depth discussion about
Thus
payment.
began Lucas's trip down the route of graft and
Yeah, we talked about payment processors and the bias of the banking industry against the cannabis retail industry and ways that we might team up to try to mount a fight about that. But you couldn't have told me that I would serve on a neighborhood organization that is officially sanctioned and recognized, that is also in league with a cannabis retailer, place that has reliable snowfall. 20 years ago, you couldn't have told me those things.
I
So
mean,
here we
I,
are.
I I always have my overriding theory, which is, again, as someone who's played around in this, I'm like, they should issue bonds.
Mm.
Be like, hey, you can buy a bond from, like, completely legitimately buy a bond from me, a company, and it has an interest rate, and I'll pay you back, and I can pay you back because I can't put my money anyplace else.
Buy them today.
And then I can take
Cannabon.
that money from the selling of the bond and put it in a bank.
Cannabons. Get your cannabons today. So let's talk about the giant elephant in the room, shall we? So, well, I would say if you've been living under a rock, but the problem is that concerning the story from East Palestine, Ohio, and the train crash and explosion and fire that has been the thing there, you can't be accused of living under a rock because you were just living and the information was coming toward you, and the corporate media apparatus brought the rock over and placed it upon you to keep you from the information. And this story, David, is it 3 weeks old? It's an old story by
It's
24-hour
it's really
for-profit news
it's
standards.
2 weeks. It's 2 weeks.
Still real fucking old. 2 weeks is a lot in modern media culture where information instantaneously lands on the internet. But it took until about a week into it before it was a legit news story getting talked about. And it took until like the
A little
last 3 or
less.
4 days for it to be a
A little
major
less.
headline above the fold.
So as okay, so and maybe that may be true. I am normally stupidly plugged in because, um, this is what I do when I'm sitting alone at the bar or have off time. Is I pull up the paper.
Well, you also live on Reddit a lot more than I do, and Reddit tends to
I do Reddit. And
spark.
I plug into other things.
Yeah, you tend to consume more detailed underground immediate assessment of stories that haven't made the mainstream. But the reality is 2 weeks ago I was hearing people complain about how this is not getting covered and it is not getting the exposure that it deserves, and I noticed that it indeed did not score on the front pages of
No,
anybody.
it didn't, because I mean this is huge. And for those of you who don't understand, like, just to give everyone a summation of what happened. So as near as we can tell thus far, what happened is trains going down the track
Norfolk
around East
Southern,
Palestine.
that's the villain in
Norfolk
this.
Southern train.
The
Yeah,
villain in this saga is Norfolk Southern.
Norfolk Southern train. And a wheel on one of the cars caught a switch. Now, for those of you who don't know what a switch is a place in the track where it can go one of two ways. And one of the wheels on one of the cars, instead of going along the track that it was supposed to, basically caught the angle, right? And then a problem started. And it didn't happen immediately. It took a little bit for that wheel continuing to mess everything up. Uh, it took a couple of miles for it to finally cause a cascade failure all the way down the line on this train. And what this train was carrying was this stuff called vinyl chloride.
It was carrying a lot of stuff. That was one of the
Yeah.
stuffs. Lots of
The
chemicals.
really scary
That's
stuff
one
was
of the
vinyl
really bad
chloride.
ones.
The vinyl chloride was the really bad stuff. It had a number of hazardous, poisonous chemicals on the train. Vinyl chloride just happened to be the one that was particularly of note, to be like, oh, that's not good. That's bad. That's really bad.
And this
Because
train,
vinyl chloride. Here's the
this
thing:
this
when vinyl
train
chloride,
was almost 2 miles long.
2 mile long train,
9,800 feet long.
uh, vinyl chloride, when it decomposes, it produces this really nifty stuff called phosphine gas. Now, we know what phosphine gas is because we used it during the First World War as a chemical weapon, because it doesn't take that much. It's a little tiny bit. In fact, if you've seen Breaking Bad, at one point, a plot point at one point during the show, he's going to kill people with phosphine gas because it's a little tiny bit, and you're dead. Now, vinyl chloride in the wild doesn't produce a ton of admittedly doesn't produce a ton of phosphine gas, but a lot of things went wrong here, which is when the train derailed, it obviously caused a fire. The choice was, with the fire, to either detonate all the hazardous chemicals that were on the train, or let them explode on their own and have a worse situation, or have them leak into everything else, everywhere else, instead of burning them off immediately, or hopefully burning more of them off immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened is the train derails, the fire department gets there, they try and put out the fire, they can't put out the fire, they make the choice, we're going to blow up the train. Yes, that's where that this is how bad this is. We're going to blow up a 2-mile train as
Well,
the least bad option.
to be fair, It was no longer spread
Too be
across 2
fast,
miles.
too
It was
fast, too be
mostly
fast,
in a
too be fast.
pile in one place. But,
Yeah.
yeah. And,
Um,
of course, this is all happening in, a small, unassuming Rust Belt, disadvantaged, uh, I would say target Trump demographic town.
oh yeah. So,
And,
um,
here they are, victims of the very system that they perpetuated their whole voting lives.
well,
Um,
we haven't we need to get to there. We haven't we need to sort of lay out the story here a little bit more, Lucas, because we
yeah.
haven't really quite gotten there yet. Because of course, what happened is after they blew up this train, which by the way, the pictures of the plume of smoke are just horrifying.
Oh, it's spectacular. It's like a
Um,
war's like, it looks a lot like a small major tactical weapon has been dropped, and it's just an enormous fucking, I mean, the one version of the image is in tonight's show art, so that's just one. If you do a search for Ohio train crash, you'll see it's like perspective after perspective from every location around. There's
I
just
mean,
this
there was a
enormous
passenger plane
fucking
flying
fireball with a
above.
smoke plume.
I mean, there was a passenger plane flying above, and you can see this clear black circle from where the burn off from these chemicals was. Um, and then we need to talk about the number of things that went wrong that led to this. Actually, before we get to the number of things that went wrong, we need to talk about the immediate impact, which is
Mhm.
uh, at first they didn't want to evacuate anyone. Then they realized, oh shit, we need to evacuate everyone
Mhm.
from around this. And then they're like, do we need to evacuate? Then the evacuation order kept getting wider and wider and wider. Um, Anyone who left their pets behind, they're dead. Any farm animals that were in the area, they're dead. The birds that used to live in the area, they're dead. The fish in local waterways, they're dead. But everything's fine, really. Uh, but now we need, like, to the point of our topic, we need to come to how we got here, which is, first of all, how did that wheel catch the switch? Right? That's
Do
what
you
began this problem.
do you want the, I've got the video of the dude explaining a lot of that
Yeah,
whenever you
go ahead and let rail worker union dude explain what happened.
So these vertical videos that we are plagued with because modern society decided to disobey visual science, require me to pull David and myself out so that we're not peeking at you from behind the video. So here we go.
Rail workers warned us about disaster like this. I heard firsthand months ago about the corporate practice of precision scheduled railroading.
Precision scheduled railroading is shorter staff, longer hours, longer trains, less safety, less maintenance. Do I have all that right?
Oh, you got it all right. I
Okay.
mean, a lot of the derailments that you're seeing on national TV is one of a few things. It's lack of maintenance on the track, where they've cut the track gangs too short and they can't get out to fix it, or they've cut the carmans, which is the union that works on the rail cars. So we had one derailment here in Northeast Ohio where a wheel flange was very thin. It picked a switch and derailed the entire train. Luckily, it was full of candle wax and not something highly volatile.
Rail workers tried to strike over this stuff, but were stopped by Congress. A few weeks later, and here we are. Several Norfolk Southern cars of toxic, highly volatile chemicals exploded fantastically in the tiny town of East Palestine, Ohio, 20 miles from where I grew up. So I met Clyde in East Palestine to ask him about it.
It looks like a faulty bearing caused a catastrophic derailment. These railroads are turning profits hand over fist. They've cut their workforce to bare bones, and now they're paying the price for it because the wheels are falling off the train, basically. Carmen were inspecting cars about 3 minutes per car. That's always been the industry standard. Now it's 90 seconds per car.
Is that because of PSR?
Yes, it's a rush job right now. And these guys are under pressure. I mean, they're working men and women. And, if they don't hurry up and get this car done, they're going to be fired.
Great points. So I went to a press conference with Norfolk Southern and Ohio Governor Mike DeWine to ask them about this.
What could precision scheduled railroad have to do with the axle failure that caused the derailment?
I have no idea that it's a mechanical issue. Precision scheduled railroading is a management process.
Not a great answer, and that's probably because Norfolk Southern let a worker take the fall, rather than a single corporate executive showing up in the town that they polluted to be held accountable. You see, Wall Street owns Norfolk Southern. 74% of shares are owned by a who's who of infamous hedge funds, and this is the business model that they demand. Profit at any cost. And disaster like this is simply a cost of doing business. They cut everything, make all the money, and pay off disasters in tiny flyover towns from the profit. But instead of answering for any of that, they're betting that the corporate media, under the same pressure for extreme profit as railroads, will only ask questions about how much cancer people will get and not why this preventable disaster happened.
I got my rail accidents confused. This was a faulty ball bearing, not a wheel catching the.
I mean, it's the same subject matter. It's the same source of the failure. Is the cheapness, the shortcuts, and I mean, I just can't imagine 90 seconds a piece for a train that's 9,800 feet long. I mean, it just seems like a shit show. It's a unmitigated shit show. Like, how do you even begin to deal with that much train in the first place? Like, to me, and I don't know anything about rail shit, but that seems like it's too long to be manageable or safe.
But they've got to turn the profit, right? They've got to continue to turn the bigger, better profit. And one of the things that's that is also present here is this could have been prevented, right? If not for corporate greed, because under Obama, a rule was put in place to try and make rail lines implement a new braking system. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with train braking systems, which I'm going to be honest, before this happened, neither was I. But apparently, we're using the same pneumatic, the exact same, not kind of the same, not slightly improved, not, we did something with the levels and the metals and things. No. The exact same braking system that has been in place on U.S. trains since not 2000, not 1950, not 1930, not 1900, not 1870, 1861. Exact same braking system since 1860 motherfucking one.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right, David?
But it was broke, and the Obama administration said that they knew it was broke, and they tried to implement the system called EAS, Electronic Augmented Something System, which basically put a little computer-controlled braking system on every car, right? So, okay, car in front of me is having a problem. It's alerting, I need to brake, right? Instead of the engine having to pull the giant lever just like in the old Westerns, right? And crank that bitch down because there's a cow in the rail. I'm like, no, I mean, like that was what's supposed to happen. It was supposed to help prevent these derailments by slowing the damaged part of the train down so that it wouldn't derail, or if it did derail, so it just kind of flopped over on its side, right? It didn't do this giant pile up fireball thing like it did in East. I'm going to try and pronounce this the Ohio way. Palestine. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
I just refuse.
It's okay. I live in Tennessee, and one of the nearby communities is Lebanon. So I get the local pronunciation.
Well, it could be worse. You could be in Versailles, Kentucky,
or Cairo, which,
God.
by the way, Cairo is spelled Cairo. And for those of you who are
Like,
not up to date in your world geography, that spells Cairo.
phonetically, it's not even remotely acceptable the way it's like.
Right?
You could look at Versailles and get Versailles, but no, there's no other way that you can say Cairo. Anyway, we
you have to
digress.
remember it's Cairo. It's Cairo in the local dialect.
Yeah.
Uh,
So there's so
and-
much of this that is preventable, and so much of this that's clearly the fault of cost cutting, corner cutting, all in, like you said, the name of turning more and more profit, which, you know, we're indoctrinated early on in America to believe that profit is so that people can make a living. Profit is the business person should be able to make a living. That's why they're in business, so they need to make a profit. But it's not. It's about shareholders. It's about playing the market fucking casino. It's not about the value that we think of when we think of American capitalist ventures to go make a buck and do well for yourself. People are doing more than well at the tops of these organizations, serving these lords and masters who are doing stupefyingly well. And as we referred to earlier in our previous segment, so well that they can't even see a way of possibly shifting even one tiny bit of their behavior. And they would rather, be lynched rich than share a little bit with the rest of us.
I mean, and I'm going to return to what led up to this, right? Which is, we actually had for those of you who don't remember, a few months ago, we had railroad workers getting ready to strike over things like this, because the railroads would have needed to do a number of things, such as basic human rights things like provide sick days, and also hire more people. And I want to say, this is a thing that's been going on for a hot minute in American capitalism with regards to how profit rates work. And yes, I want to hit Brian's comment here. We're raised to respect and hold holy the established ways of the shareholders. And more, we need to recognize that we like to think that grandma and grandpa are the guys who are the people who have like these, their little dividend check from their 401k or, their whatever retirement fund that they're in. That isn't how this actually works. What you have now is you have giant hedge funds taking massive amounts of money and turning around and saying, we need to see a 10% growth this year, or we're pulling we're going to sell off our stocks at a loss, which will hurt grandma and grandpa. And we're going to we'll take the proceeds and reinvest them someplace else. The way these companies are thinking about things is that they, especially in one of the things that pisses me off about modern American capitalism, is this: they need a constant infusion of money because they're no longer generating profit. Right. And ironically, part of the reason they're no longer generating profit is because their emphasis has become on generating shareholder value.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had a moment kind of like this in the 1910s, 1920s, and it's typified by the Dodge Brothers case. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the Dodge Brothers of Dodge Motors used to be major investors in Ford Motor Company. And part of the reason they established Dodge Motors was because they were angry at Henry Ford, because Henry Ford was not generating them enough profit. Because Henry Ford was more concerned about long-term growth and finding consistent supply chains, sometimes in rather wacky ways, granted, which is, the Dodge Brothers suit was not entirely out of bounds when they're like, he went and built a city in the middle of Brazil.
I mean,
what's going on here? And Ford's justification
weird, but
was he
it was a
wanted a
pretty damn
consistent supply
efficient
of
way to get rubber.
Yeah. But I mean, it's wacky stuff was happening, but even the court looked at the Dodge Brothers and was kind of like, "Listen, dude, you signed up for this deal. You bought the stock. I don't know what to tell you. He's not doing anything wacky. I mean, it's wacky, but he's not doing
Not
anything
illegal.
like he's not taking like hundos and wiping his ass with them. We're gonna let this slide. But that's not how modern American shareholder corporate relations work. One of the classic examples of how bad it can get actually is Apple. Apple is one of the most hostage taken corporations in America. And the reason they're hostage taken is this: Apple would love to find a way to work with the American government to bring in the more now almost $2 trillion held in offshore banks and bring it back into the US and invest it into other things. Their investors got so greedy that they made them do this. They had to take out loans and are continuing to take out loans against the value of all this accumulated cash that they can't bring back into the US, which again, Apple would like to work out some sort of like, can I not pay the whole tax rate? Now, I'll be honest, for $2 trillion fucking dollars, I think we can make a deal.
Yeah.
But instead of making a deal that would actually require them to pay less in taxes, they've made Apple take out loans and from those loans pay them dividends on this accumulated cash in offshore banks. It's gotten insane. It's gotten to a level of insanity that simply doesn't make any sense. Right now, angel investors, right? And Lucas and I have been through this process before, which is, all right, so what should be the standard return if someone invests in our in a company? And if you're the first investor, the standard, the minimum standard of what people expect is 500% in 5 years. So if I give you $100,000, I need you to hand in cash to me $500,000 in 5 years.
It's just ludicrous. Like you can't make that much happen without sacrificing. And that's how we get into this situation. When you look at the idea of a 5-fold return, you have to cheat a lot of shit to get there. And that's how you end up in the situation where we have shitty practices of cost cutting, corner cutting, shitty labor practices. It's all in the pursuit of cheapening the culture, the internal stability, the long-term contribution and success. All of it gets cheapened in the pursuit of, oh well, these people got to have all this profit, all this money, all this return on their investment, and nobody's in a long game anymore. Like when I was a kid, the way I learned all this, and I use kid, I say all the way, I mean all the way through school, is that you got in with something and you stayed the course. And then one day you had a lot of money built up. But now we don't play that game. We have these fucking smarmy cunts that come out of this hedge fund universe, and it's like, nope, pay off next week or it's not a thing. And it's just wild.
And I want to point something out. Ironically, I can almost understand the 500% in 5 years. I can almost understand that. given bank practices, borrowing practices. I can almost figure that out. Right? I'm like, there's a logical, rational financial path to 500% in 5 years for a startup, if it's a decent startup.
Hmm.
There's a path. The problem is, let's say you're Ford Motor Company. You have an established base. You sell cars at this rate. You generate interest at this rate. You compete with GM and now Tesla and Chrysler. And you do this and you try and eke out, another 0.5% of market share here, maybe another 0.25% of market share there. But this is an established market. But if I'm a stockholder now in today's America, right? If you aren't showing a 5% growth, then you're shit. Now, imagine what 5% is, however, to Ford, right? I mean, this is where like people can sometimes get a little confused because like, well, 5% doesn't sound that bad. I mean, I tip 20% to my waiter now because, well, employers are shit. It doesn't sound awful. I mean, I didn't mind tipping an extra 5%. 5% of $50 billion motherfucking dollars. That's how much I got to add.
That's a bunch.
I got to find a way to add. Let me do the math here real fast because I suck at math. That's why I went to law school. Wait, where's my phone? Yeah, here it is. Let me do 5% of $50 billion. 0.05 times 5, 1, 2, 3, 5,000, 1, 2, 3, 5 million, 1, 2, 3. Wait, yep, need to delete one of those. 5 million, 50 million, 500 million.
Grandpa David and his calculator.
That can't be right. Hold on a second.
What do you want to do?
5% of 50 billion.
I'm sure someone out there is about to just say this off the top of their head, but I don't like to try to do percents in any kind of estimation of what I think I know.
No, I've got it now. That's $2.5 billion added each year. So I was right the first time. I'm like, no, that can't be right. No, it was right.
It was how much was the initial sum or the initial figure?
$50 billion. So 5% of that makes sense.
Yeah.
$2.5 billion. That's what I got to. That's what I got to add.
Yeah, that's a lot. All of it's a lot from the very beginning.
So somehow Ford has got to find a way to sell. Let me do the math here. So let's say the average cost of a car is, let's call it with deductions and everything else. Let's call it $17,000. Let me do the math again, just real fast.
There's no route to that because of all the other revenue streams they have to build in. They can't even get there on cars alone. Wait, did you just say 17? Are you smoking crack? 30.
Well, no, for a budget car. So, all right.
I am now going to obstinately check to see if you can get a Ford for under 20 because I don't think so.
All right. We'll do 20,000. So that means you have to sell 125,000 more cars every single year.
Yeah.
125,000 more cars every single year to meet investor demand.
So apparently the dinkiest thing they now sell new is the EcoSport.
Yep.
They just said fuck it to Focus and
I know.
Fusion,
Well, they should have because I own a Focus and I understand why they said fuck it.
So the basic ass Entry level EcoSport is 22 grand.
So we'll call it 25.
Still, it's a lot. And then they've got to have all these other revenue sources. They've got to make money in all these other ways. Service,
100,000 new cars.
various
They have to sell
subscription-based offerings. I mean,
100,000 new cars every single year.
well,
100,000 new cars every single year.
and we're not even talking profit. Like, there's that part too. Because the numbers that you're talking about are profit-based. So we don't even know what the profit margin is on those cars. It's more cars than that.
Ford actually typically takes a loss on its cars. GM takes a very small profit. Tesla takes a large profit. Shocking, because it's a glorified golf cart. I mean, it's continually reached points of insanity. And the irony is that Ford, at least in terms of when I look at corporations with good debt management and good corporate philosophy about profit versus debt, they're one of the best.
Yeah.
I mean, Tesla's debt to profit ratio is 500%. In other words, if Tesla took every last bit of revenue that it received in a year, it would take 5 years of that to equal their debt load.
So
Ford would have to take something like a quarter of a year to pay off all its outstanding debts.
I want to dial this topic of business greed, because it's not just corporate. Corporate is the standard bearer. They set the bar, but then everybody else comes along and tries to play the game. And today, a very micro local example of what I think is the full spectrum of this phenomenon came right to our front door practically. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, because I was bloviating about this to my dear long-suffering partner, who told me to shut the fuck up and talk to David about it. So right down the street, we have a little Dairy Queen, and it is seasonally open from March till whatever the fuck the closing month is. It's been owned by a local family in the neighborhood for 60 years. It is a franchise. They announced today on Facebook that this is their last season. They alluded to the pressures and difficulties of running a business these days as one of the reasons why they're stepping away. And this got me thinking about a lot of different aspects, and it got me hovering around something that you've heard, and a lot of people have heard me talk or watched this. Lucas's rule of being the man. And Lucas's rule of being the man is, despite the mythology you were fed somewhere along the way in your life, you have absolutely no right to be the man, because somebody got to work for somebody. We can't all be our own boss and own a business. But unfortunately, it really feels like we, for decades and decades in this country, especially since the grab-assy Reagan era, we really sold this concept of, oh, everybody can be their own boss and be an entrepreneur and start their own business and be great and be rich and make money. And I think it's what's inspired a lot of cheat to win. Now, when I say cheat to win, I don't mean outright cheat. I don't mean outright crime. But our kid is going to work at that Dairy Queen again this summer. He worked at that Dairy Queen last summer. The paychecks were handwritten. Now, there are legitimate reasons why one might do that. But my question to somebody in that situation is, you've been in business 60 years and you have never once decided to hire a payroll printing check company?
That's actually
There's no database that you can go look at your pay stub in.
That's
There's a lot of margin for. I mean, I'm not saying I don't know. I don't have any reason to believe anybody's doing anything. But when you have a system like that, you have the possibility that people are fudging.
well, I mean, I technically work for one employer, and my paychecks all say, "Get this. This is I love this when I see my paychecks." Creative Solutions 3, which, by the way, means that there's a Creative Solutions 1, a Creative Solutions 2,
Right.
and
You see
I'm
what
being
I'm
paid by
saying?
Creative Solutions 3, not by my employer. My paycheck does not say my employer. Which I'm getting ready to file taxes, and I'm kind of like, how do I put this down? Because apparently, I guess what you're trying to say is my employer doesn't actually employ anyone. Creative Solutions employs me, which is very fucking confusing.
Yeah, but that's not that uncommon. Here's what my theory that I tend to view a lot of what's going on right now in the service industry, and I think it comes on up to this corporate level that we talked about with this train. This exodus from running businesses, to me, earlier today I described it as the find out stage. It's the find out stage following the fuck around. And we don't use this nearly enough. We don't get to use the fuck around and find out graphic nearly
There he
enough.
is.
The little
There's
old
Gritty. Oh, I missed
Um,
you, Gritty.
But to me, we are in an era where people have been able to get away with cheapness and running businesses with the luxury of just-in-time supply chains so that they didn't have to have any actual pre-planning. They didn't have to have any actual in-stock liability for supplies. They've been able to run on the abuse and exploitation of cheap labor in the service industry. And now all of a sudden, the piper has come with his hand out to get paid. And that's not
Yep.
paid, but that's a social payment that has come due because the era of abusing and exploiting workers is starting to face a lot of resistance. And just in time
It's coming
inventory
with
management has
costs.
failed miserably.
It's coming with costs. Why did we why in a first world developed country? I want to point this out. Has Norway or Denmark or France or even the UK or Germany ever faced a shortage where they're like, we don't have enough infant formula,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Why did we have that happen in the US? We had that happen in the US because we stretched our supply chains to a point of insanity where we only had one factory, one, not two, not three, not one factory, one, in a nation
Mhm.
of 400 million people. We had one factory producing infant formula.
Olivia points out,
What
I may or may
the
not have
actual fuck, ladies and gentlemen? What the fuck?
I may or may not have one or more former employees that will hit the find out phase soon. Bad decisions and poor practices. Now, I say all this, I'm just guessing and using the example of theory based on this little tiny Dairy Queen in our neighborhood who I think it's really neat. I think it's cool. I hope somebody buys it and runs it and honors the legacy. Even though it's just a Dairy Queen, technically it was a local franchisee, so it kind of straddled that space.
It's not even
But
a proper
also,
Dairy Queen. It's like some sort of seasonal Shake Shack.
well, so I'm also willing to theorize about blame that Dairy Queen would have to own, because at some point in the process, Dairy Queen is responsible for these people's success or failure, and you can bet your ass they have been dealing with the fallout of plenty of greedy corporate decisions from the Dairy Queen level.
Olivia, let me answer this real fast because she put this up. There's an infant formula. Definitely more than one. So for those of you who are listening and not reading these texts, she knows of 2 infant formula factories. There's definitely more than one. There's what happened
Well, there's
when
one
we
here
had that.
too.
What happened when we
One
had
or
that
two.
crisis is they're all owned by one company, and as I understand, the supply chain bottleneck happened when there's one plant that's in charge of, I guess, producing some sort of essential compound to these infant formulas. I'm not a chemist, not my bailiwick, man. And for those of you who don't know that, go read some English literature. You should. Um, um, so one of the reasons that happened, where we had an infant formula crisis in America, it was we lacked the ability to produce infant formula from at least this one major factory to distribute it across the United States. Now, I can be misinformed. I'm always happy to be proven wrong. I'm for those of you who are not familiar, I am always happy for someone to be like, "No, you're full of shit." Like, no, I've learned something. I can grow as a person.
So it's the stuff. I was just doing some quick refresh because I remember I cared about this enough to research it at one point, and then I just stopped caring. It is apparently there are 4 primary producers, and they produce like 98% of the supply.
But it was one falling down that created the issue.
Well, there was the final straw. Apparently, was what happened here with a contamination issue that shut down a plant here in Sturgis, Michigan, with a recall and so on and so forth. The real question there being, what kind of fucking greedy shortcutting bullshit led to that contamination problem potentially?
Right. So I've now learned something. There are 4 major suppliers, and apparently, but again, like when you get down to one factory shuts down, and we have a massive shortage across the entire United States. That's a serious problem. Eggs are another example, right? I kind of referenced that during Hot Take Happy Hour. We had a major egg processing plant shut down, and then all of a sudden eggs become an issue.
Well, these 2 things also have one thing in common: hype. I have seen so many people saying so much shit about eggs, so many funny memes about, I've got eggs for sale, don't lowball me, I know what I've got, and that kind of shit. Lots of really funny things. But it's a lot of hype, because when I was busy hearing from people about eggs are $8, eggs are too expensive, down here at our bougie urban market store, they were $3.50, and it's the most expensive usually among the grocery stores. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of the elements of this that are fed by the hype.
Well,
That
and I will say
it's
this:
a
as somebody who works in a
self-perpetuating
restaurant,
problem. It's like, saying that there's a shortage of bread when there's snow in the South. Well, no, it's mostly based on the hype and the overreaction of people buying too much. So I'm not saying that happened with the baby formula or the eggs, but I think that there's this common vernacular about a crisis, and then there's what plays out on the ground. Even with the baby formula stuff, I was seeing a lot of Reddit posts where people were like, "Oh my God, look at the shelves at my grocery store. I can't get formula." And then somebody be like, "Well, then drive across town because look at this motherfucker." And they would like take a picture of fucking loaded shelves filled with baby formula.
and
So a lot of it has to do
I-
with like the public zeitgeist opinion on the issue, I think.
again, I think that the problem is that we've definitely created a lot of supply chain bottlenecks. The bird flu issue I haven't heard about. I haven't heard about the dead chickens in mass.
Yeah, that was a big
not-
piece of the egg problem.
Uh,
But I still don't see first of all, maybe this is a privileged view, and I can get corrected because we actually, we have someone who here that deals with food and nutrition, et cetera, and
Yeah.
then she'll quickly tell me if this is a boneheaded opinion. But
Yeah, I know. Well, she regularly
I'm
tells me I'm
not
bullshit, so
aware
I'm
of a
fine with it.
reality in which we just have to have eggs. I mean, it's one thing for the Washington Post to say, "Hey, skip breakfast." It's another thing to like have to have eggs all the time. Like, eh, eh, mm,
I
eggs
will
are a
say
good,
this.
reliable staple item, but eggs are not necessary, and you could get by for a minute without them. I think.
For a lot of food producers, so like I regularly receive shipments from our at least one of the two major food producers or food distributors in the United States. And yeah, it is a big
Big
ingredient in a lot of
ingredient, and
production.
that's true. That's
The but I will say this: one of the things that I've constantly encountered is so one of the things that happens regularly is you buy something like you'll go onto their website and you'll make your order, right? Now, under the contracts that these people have with restaurants and grocery stores and everyone else, you can assume that what you buy at is the price. That does not have to hold true. And every single week, we have to go through and adjust our budget upwards, right? Because it'd be like, okay, well, I bought chicken thighs at this price, right? And then they get delivered and they hand us the bill and it's 50 cents, a dollar higher.
mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, one of the things that's happened consistently over the past 8 months, and I've been able to look at the numbers, is that every single time it's 5 cents higher, 10 cents higher, 20 cents higher. Sometimes as much as for some stuff, as much as a dollar higher, right?
So
And the problem is that you're looking at these people going, okay, I can't just change my price to 10 cents higher. I have a printed menu, right?
right.
So if you keep on adjusting your prices higher, for people who are wondering why prices like keep on seeming to go up, um, look at U.S. Foods and Cisco and ask them, why are your prices continuously going up every single time I order food?
But they're going to point to all
Uh,
sorts of amorphous shit that you can't really put a finger on. When in reality, they're just trying to preserve these fat fucking paychecks for the top dogs and the investors. They're trying to
which is part
preserve
of the problem.
these fat profit margins. And I don't really blame these people down the street, Dairy Queen. I don't think they were making an extravagant living. But what I have a problem with is the idea that, the going gets a little tough and so many people are getting out of the business. Now, should we lose some shit? Probably. I mean, technically, in a 5-block span of the main street that goes through here that divides our neighborhood from the next neighborhood, technically, Bridge Street, there are 4, possibly 5 Mexican restaurants of some breed. And it's not like in Nashville where if there was an old Hardee's or an old Pizza Hut, it got green paint slapped on the roof and became a Mexican restaurant. It's not like that. These are definitely different offerings, but at the end of the day, they're all fucking
Oh
Mexican.
no, we're heading to that. We're heading that range. It's actually one of the things someone was commenting to me, like, "Hey, you know a lot about food and drink and all this other stuff. You should set up your own restaurant." And I looked at them. I'm like, "Do you know just around my neighborhood how many restaurants have closed?"
Yeah. Well, and I think
I mean,
we have been filthy with
so
restaurants.
those of you who may not notice, like my fro has been my triannual shave has occurred, and I accidentally went to the old place where my hair cutter was today, and got to see which not far from where Lucas used to live, and got to see that my old work at ML Rose is still there, But all the other restaurants that set up around there, how many of them are left?
Did
I mean,
Smoking
I'm
Thighs
asking you, Lucas.
close?
How like do you like of the number of restaurants that used to be around me, which was like Farm Burger and Double Dogs and Smoking Thighs and Otto's and all those other places? How many of them do you think are left?
I mean, I'm going to assume half have folded.
You'd be wrong.
What's closed now? I'm actually legitimately curious.
Farm Burger's gone. Double
That's not
Dogs
surprising.
is closing. Smoking
Who?
Thighs
Wait, which one?
is closing.
Slow down. Who?
Farm Burger,
Yeah.
they're closing.
Yeah, that's
They
not surprising.
actually have closed. They've apparently been gone for a hot minute.
That's not surprising. They were a pretty specifically bougie burger joint on a street that had a much more effective burger joint in ML Rose.
Smoking Thighs is on its last legs.
That's not surprising. Did you say Double
no,
Dogs was in trouble?
Double Dogs was in trouble.
That doesn't make any sense. They're Rafferty's.
Yeah, except they're not bougie,
I mean, they kind of are.
and
They're
but
overpriced
they're
and-
shitty bougie, right? They're like if you go in and you ask for like a double IPA, they're going to be like, "Excuse me, while I put my teeth back in."
I don't know, man. I went there a lot working across the street from them. I didn't think they were bad, but it was just, what if Rafferty's was spun into a sports bar with essentially the same supply item?
Well, even 5 Points Pizza is apparently closing up shop.
I don't know if that's surprising because I feel like they shot themselves in the ass in a few ways. They did that lingering overreaction to the pandemic thing that I was starting to criticize a lot of my leftist brethren with. Like, they were running the pickup window built into the door for way too fucking long, from what I understand.
But I mean, there's a lot of places that we're done. ML Rose is still there.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's what gets me is that there may be legitimate, issues that ends just don't meet, right? But I'm also concerned that there are realities setting in on a lot of these people, that they built their business model on the ability to be cheap, the ability to abuse and exploit a workforce. And I don't know if it's bad that we're losing some stuff. I think we've possibly had way too goddamn many restaurants in a lot of cases. I think, I mean, how many Mexican restaurants can you cram into 4 blocks of Bridge Street? How many burger joints can you slap into one stretch of one road in Nashville? It's just, there's just so much everywhere and a lot of redundancy. And on top of that, you throw in all these costs and realities that these people are now facing. I mean, I don't know if I'm surprised, and I don't know if it's a bad thing. But here's the thing that makes me wonder and worry. And I know, David, you and I have disagreed very much on overpopulation. I think America has too goddamn many people as it stands today.
Not even close.
And see, you disagree with that. But now my question to you is, when all these places are closed, all these jobs have gone away, and no one has anywhere to work, but they still need to have a roof and some food and some health care, where are we? And if we don't eliminate some people, we're fucked, because the rest of the jobs are also on the chopping block.
We've eliminated necessary jobs, just like on the railroad, right? Look at the railroad. There were necessary jobs that needed to be filled.
Yes.
Right? And they didn't fill them.
True.
And we ended up with East Palestine, using the local vernacular. That's what happened. There were jobs available.
So what do? Do we force these people to hire people? I mean, I don't understand where we're ever going to find a solution to tamp down the greed and put people in work. And then there's my cynicism that we overestimate the human need to know things. I don't want to belittle the inspector of a train car, But I'm 99% sure that my theory that any competent adult can learn basically anything, you could take a guy off of the cash register at McDonald's and teach them to fucking inspect a rail car. But I don't think
Yes,
you
you
can
can.
tell the industry that. And that's the problem I have with a lot of the
No, I mean,
overestimation.
you
We do a
can
lot of bullshitting in
if
the workforce about
if
knowledge and
if there's
qualifications.
you can if there's enough pressure. One of the things is happening has consistently happened, and yes, Olivia, you're right. Employment is still stupidly low. Unemployment is still stupidly
Yeah.
low. We could stand more people, but we need more housing first. Yet we do need a metric shit ton more housing.
I
We
mean,
need
I'm
BlackRock.
seeing a lot of this shit just, it's coming to an interesting head in a French Revolution sort of way. I mean, I'm not
Yep, sure is.
I'm not real sure how shit's going to go
For those
if
of
the
you who aren't seeing,
powerful and the rich
my
continue
big,
to
oh, you
deny,
betcha face on.
like the powerful and the rich continue to deny what is necessary and needed by the majority of the population.
Because they need to continue to show these ridiculous profits. One of the things is that we could actually stand to employ a metric shit ton more people in a metric shit ton more jobs. We should have more baby formula factories. We should have redundancy in the system. If only corporations would be willing to accept as little as a 3% to 4% loss in profit. Now, one of the things that happens, however, when you employ more people is this. Do corporations or does anyone pay the U.S. government or their state government when they employ people? The answer is no. Their salary is tax deductible. The only things that they have to pay are their portions of of unemployment insurance, workman's comp, and the rest of and Social Security, right? So they have to pay their portion of Social Security. So it's actually relatively cheap to employ people. This is one of the reasons why restaurants are being hit abnormally hard, is because they weren't already by rules. They weren't already paying people a fair wage, and then all of a sudden, but they still had to pay Social Security, insurance, everything else on each one of these employees. And now they're being faced with actual competition over, like you said, Farm Burger. And I will grant you, Farm Burger had a tough road to haul. I would argue that, at least in that spot, the main issue was greed, but not because of anything in particular. The greed was, it was a bad spot, right? There was no
I don't know if it's a
parking
bad
for any.
spot. I think
Oh
it's
no,
a
it was a
bad
terrible spot.
now. I think it's a bad spot post pandemic. I think
No, it was always a terrible spot. There was no place for, again, in a city with no functioning public transit, and for them to have no immediate parking anywhere near the door.
What? They had parking. What's wrong with you? You can park right behind the motherfucker. You
right
can park
behind,
on the side
not in front or anywhere near. That's one of the things that like ML Rose.
That's not
right down,
their
like,
fault. That's a zoning thing. The city wants.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying is
Nashville wants
makes
shit up to the sidewalk with parking obscured.
Bad site location, bad choice of site location is, I got greedy. I saw numbers and I put I put something in some place that could not succeed.
I think you're being a car centric, full of shit, fucking.
Because we have no public transit.
Who cares?
Yes,
Park behind the building and walk around the building, the front fucking door, you fat ass. I mean, I don't understand the problem here.
Hi,
I walked there from my office. My office, incidentally, had a garage fucking behind it, and you had to walk out of your car and use your feet to walk to the door to get in the elevator and come to your job. They did not make that choice. The city of Nashville decided how they wanted to urban overlay the things that are built on Charlotte Pike.
No,
they wanted shit that comes up to the sidewalk.
I would not
I
open a
mean,
restaurant there ever.
why? Why not? I don't think there's a problem with asking Americans to park
Because
their fucking car and
no
walk around
parking
to the
and no
fucking
public
door.
transit. There we go.
No. We need to tell people to get over themselves, park their goddamn car in the parking lot, walk around the goddamn building, go through the front door.
And everyone, welcome to Lucas's sermon on the Mount about you need to be able to park all like in the parking lot that no one actually may or may not know exists.
It has a traffic light, for fuck's sake. It's a road. They built a private road.
I can't see the parking lot from the street.
You're not looking. You don't have the excuse that we do up here. No one's going to pile 4 feet of snow on the corner to keep you from turning your head and looking and seeing that, oh shit, there's not only is a sign buried under that pile of snow, but there's a parking lot on the other side. Anyway, I think that's a little bit of blame that they don't need to hold, because I think they had a good idea.
We're veering away from the point. The main point is this, is that the pursuit of profit to satisfy shareholders has reached an epidemic portion
to an extreme. That's the
United States.
Like a lot of people don't necessarily on first blush might not know that we both like capitalism fundamentally.
Yeah. And
the concept
and to make it make sense, the rest of the developed world is capitalist, arguably, but they also provide basic services that we don't in the US, and the continued refusal to provide these basic services is continuing to mount up.
That's the big part.
Creating a repeated problem. And even in this face of capitalism, most of these countries say, hey, hold on one second. I need to build in redundancies. I need to build in systems in my economy so that I don't, run out of fucking eggs or cheese,
right,
or things, right? I mean, because
we need
God
to
damn it,
figure out
we're
a
a fucking
way.
developed economy. It's pretty embarrassing. It's pretty fucking embarrassing when all of a sudden, like, the price of something goes up 100%. That's a signal of a problem for us, and so we don't want to have that happen. So we build in redundancies. But in America, here in America, we run out of fucking baby formula. Here in America, we run out of fucking eggs. Here in America, we run out of fucking cheese. We run out of all sorts of motherfucking things because the greed has gotten that bad.
And we have no way to agree upon enough money. That's really what I find a lot of times is missing for a lot of people and a lot of organizations, a lot of groups. What is enough? I kind of have an idea right now. I mean, it could be worse some other time, but I kind of have an idea of enough money. I know a number of what's enough, and I'm prepared to stop there. I don't need, if I got a job next week that hit my enough mark, I'd be good to go. I don't need a continual raise. I don't need to find another next job that's another 20 grand or 30 grand more than I made at the previous. I have a number in my head of what's enough. And I don't think Americans are commonly built and wired that way by our culture.
No, I would argue that we do. I would argue that right now we're under the control of a group of people who don't have that number, right?
I think a lot of average Americans, if you stop them on the street, are going to say, keep it coming. I'll take as much as you can give me.
No, here's the thing. I don't think that's true at all. I think, like, if you did like some Jimmy Kimmel show or some shit, yeah, maybe, and they'll peel out like the most outlandish answers. But I think if you asked most Americans, they'd be like, I can pay my mortgage, I can feed my family. Maybe my spouse doesn't have to work as much.
Mm-hmm.
My car is paid for. And I have probably about for the year. And my kids have clothes and everything else. And after all is said and done, I probably have discretionary spending of around probably about, at least in my experience of talking to people, probably about $10,000.
Well, let's not forget
discretionary income.
some savings, retirement savings, and rainy day
Well,
fund.
no, that's including retirement savings, everything else. So
Yeah.
we're more than likely looking at most people would be very happy. Ironically, at a number that has been repeatedly arrived at by a number of economic think tanks, which is about $75,000 to $80,000 before inflation, the most recent round of inflation. So it's probably up to about $95,000, $100,000.
You saying per
Most
person?
Americans would be very content at $100,000 a year.
You talking about per person?
Household income.
Really?
Household income about $100,000. So if you had two people earning $50,000, which ironically, for those of you who may that for a lot of people listening to this may hear that and hear a very big number, but again, that's $50,000 per person. So two solidly middle class jobs, and that would, from their perspective, I mean, from my perspective, what I'm earning right now, and I'm not going to necessarily share all that, but I mean, I'm working my way out of debt.
Let me throw something at you, because I'm doing the economic experiment in my head. I don't think that's viable, and here's why. Without a lot of specifics, also, average American income is depressingly lower, and that is very true.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the problems that we're at right now, which is, the one of the things that happens, and I didn't want to bring up immediately, is that the because of the income disparity, right? One of the reasons why the Fed keeps on being like, "Oh, we're going to raise interest rates and that'll solve the problem." The problem is 89%. 89%. I'm going to repeat it one more time because it's that fucking stupid. 89% of Americans don't have enough assets to borrow enough of to affect the economy.
Mm-hmm.
11% of Americans have enough assets to borrow enough to affect the economy, and you're raising interest rates on people who own their family home, on their car, on their credit card, right? People who have no, as far as all this inflation is concerned, realistically, no fundamental effect on inflation.
Right. So let me get back to this
But the
income
11%
thing.
that do, you're trying to raise interest rates on the 11% who do have a fundamental impact on inflation. And instead of just raising interest rates on the 11% who do have a fundamental impact on inflation, you just nuke everything. And
Yeah.
it's the dumbest thing that I mean, literally, as economic policy, this doesn't make any goddamn sense. BlackRock and other major hedge funds that are going out there and buying land again and again and again are raising property values. Not the few people left who can afford to buy a home. If you're looking for people who are spending more on food, it's not the average American family. They've continued to buy the same amount of food.
Right.
The only thing that's changed is that Adam Daniels, is it AMD or ADM?
Arthur
I always
Daniels
forget.
Midland.
Arthur Daniels Midland, ADM, needs to hit a profit mark. And the price of food goes up. Tyson needs to hit a profit mark, and the price of food goes up. These people aren't getting raises. They're just spending. What are they going out and spending more on? The only thing they're spending more on is what they have to buy to eat.
Right. Olivia says, when I sell my house, I'm going to make people submit letters of interest with offers to weed out the investors and companies for real. So let me dovetail off of this income thing, and we're going to get into our final stretch. I would challenge you that the 100,000 comfort mark that you just proposed, in a vacuum where everything else was like it should be, you would be right. But I can tell you that our household income would be very closely shaved if we were paying what the market would say that we're supposed to pay for our rent. We have a good deal, but what we should be paying, and not what we should be paying ethically, because the whole market is unethically way the fuck over the cliff, but in the detail of what we have versus what the rent is in our city, we are getting a deal. It would eat into a lot more of our income. Our ability to save money would be drastically reduced, and even the leftover medical bills with insurance would clean up the rest of that money in my current situation. So I think it's more realistic probably to take what you said was 100, and in our current conditions in the world that we live in now, 125 or 150 would be where that would have to be.
That's not out of the realm.
It shouldn't be that way, but that's how I arrived at the theory that an individual salary of 75,000 is a comfort zone where if everybody's at about 75, then things can flow. And that's what I dropped that line in the city commission a few weeks ago. I said, if any developer is personally taking home more than $75,000 in their actual payroll check to themselves, which we know they are, then they still have some room to trim their profits and do better about affordable housing. Speaking of people that make too much money, let's take it home with my pet, the thorn in my ass that I've discovered by finally getting 2 FOIA requests filled. So I was able to obtain through Freedom of Information Act requests, which I will say were expedient, a couple of weeks. Now, that's still stupid because back home in Nashville, David, you enjoy the luxury of the full city database available to you in a fucking web interface, and you can go look up any goddamn thing and generate your own spreadsheets and reports. And that is a level of transparency I had no idea how lucky I was to have in Nashville and how amazing it is as a resource. So if you're a Nashville person, go look at that shit. There's a lot of data there, and it's right there, and you don't have to file a request for it. Up here in Michigan, however, we like to hide our shit behind layers of bureaucracy, apparently. So I was able to grab the Grand Rapids City salary table and the Grand Rapids Public Schools salary table for general purposes, and then I found out that I had questions. So I'm going to pull up the city one first. And David, before you look at it and start shaking your chin and screaming and ranting, the first few lines are aggregate totals of one job description. And that's also
so it's one person.
No, it's not one person. That's something I want to also make sure nobody that watches this thinks that that's what's going on either. So here's the GR City salary table. Now, you would look at that and go, police officer, 21 minutes. But no, that is the total paid.
That's the aggregate for all police officers.
To everybody listed as police officer. And then you have firefighter, police sergeant. So all these are groups. And there's really, like, I've replied back and asked, I need to know the number of employees in each of these groups. I would like to know the individual breakdowns, but at least then I could get an average, right? So you have to get down here before you hit individuals. I think custodians. Yeah, the first individual is the city manager. So Mark Washington, the city manager.
I want that fucking job.
Yeah.
More than $250,000 a year? Jesus Christ.
Let's put this in perspective for you, David. Nashville's mayor is capped, I think, by the charter, if not by some other ordinance passed incrementally, capped at like 160.
Yeah. I want that $250,000 job right there.
Nashville's mayor.
A city, by the way, what was it? 3 times the size of Grand Rapids?
3 times the size
Yeah.
Nashville's mayor has the executive responsibility as the chief executive of the city. That is the responsibility of the city manager in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Now, here's what I will say. I like Mark. I think he's a good guy. Technically, I think he's a good guy. He does a lot of boneheaded shit that I disagree with. He seems like he wants to piss off activists by the way he conducts business. He's not malicious. He's just too passive in a lot of cases. I don't have a problem with him as a qualified individual. He was recruited from the city of Austin as their city manager. So he did come with big nuts credentials, okay? But the running theory is he has to be paid to be retained because he's getting constantly recruited by other cities.
So more than $250,000. I need to find someplace that needs a city manager. That's what I need to do.
Well,
I
but
need
the
to
thing is,
find-
David, I don't think that you could just find any place that needs a city manager because I've got a theory that this city pays way too much fucking money for way too many different jobs. So that's the one that we know as an individual. Okay. Now, if you run down here, you're still in the zone.
I'm gonna be honest. Aquatic staff is kind of shocking me a little.
That's probably a lot of people.
I'm hoping.
No, it's going to be a lot of people. There are actual public swimming pools and water slides here, like in the parks.
Fair enough.
Some of these are very generic. I don't know who the fuck supports. I don't know who this is. You know.
Yeah. Judge seems reasonable, kind of.
This is like at least 2 people here in the deputy police chief role. But then, this is an eyebrow raiser.
$250,000 for the police chief.
Yeah, in a town with fewer square miles to cover and 1/3 of the population of Nashville. Now, I haven't done the comparison piece yet. That's part of this. This exercise will be comparing the salaries of where I came from to here. Deputy city manager, there are a couple of those at least. I think there may be 3 of them, so that's a multiple person thing.
All right, so that makes sense.
But when you dive down in here, you start to get to some individual stuff it's still pretty fucking good.
Assistant communications manager, it should be one person.
Where are you seeing that?
Assistant communications manager?
Oh, right there. Okay. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That is one person. And I think
hydraulic engineer? How many hydraulic engineers do you all need?
There could actually be a few of those, considering the public works trucks are a multifaceted vehicle with a lot of different liquids and hoses and systems.
No, but that's so hydraulics engineer is not a mechanical thing. That's someone in charge of water pressure and dams.
Oh, well, then that might be city water department or something.
Yeah, that's
and that's probably like 2 people, maybe. I doubt that's one. Where was speaking of, so the job that I applied for before we moved here. Now, I like David. He's very qualified. He was in General Petraeus's communication staff.
Also, labor relations manager, another $250,000.
Well, that could be 2 people.
No, that's one person.
So this is kind of like, this isn't terrible, but I'm a little surprised this role pays that much in government. A communications director in the private sector would be about here. So what I'm seeing in Grand Rapids is there's a lot of concern over what the private sector would pay for these jobs and keeping people. I mean,
senior graphics illustrator.
Yeah, this person's simply an illustrator, and they're in the ballpark of what I get paid as a manager in my field. So,
police financial coordinator. Nope.
Yeah, you're starting to see
secretary to the city manager. Secretary to the city manager makes $75,000 a year.
Yeah, right. Now, here's the deal. Here's what I think is going on with a lot of these roles. This person very well is a 30-year veteran, and they've just been sitting there gaining raises by not ever actually doing anything new. I have a problem with that. I had a problem with that. Even, our neighbor in Nashville, we loved and adored and still do. But one of her stories that she would tell is that she retired from the city of Nashville from the school's securities office, not an officer, but a person in the office, and was making $75K when she retired, which was a couple decades ago, or a decade ago. I don't believe in this system. I don't think you should be able to just sit still and get dust gathered on your shoulders in city government offices and continue to make more money. I feel like, especially if cities are going to try to compete with private sector salaries, they should also compete with private sector standards. If you want raises, you have to do new things.
Predictive maintenance technician, 69,000.
Yeah. So there's a lot here. We could do this all night, but let me really get your blood boiling as the son of a teacher. Oh, it wants me to save. Let's just take this out of the share. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for that? Do you have your blood pressure medication somewhere nearby? Because you're really gonna flip when you see the Grand Rapids public school salaries. I'm almost enjoying this element of torture here. All right, here we go.
Sitting here being like,
gird your loins. Okay.
Huh?
Now, before you 100% blow all the gaskets that I sort of knew that you might.
I've been drinking, so like the gaskets are like are relatively under control. I'm not.
All right, let's start at the top. Superintendent of Grand Rapids Public Schools.
Principal.
No.
I see the 100,000.
No. We'll get there because that's its own problem. But let's just start at that classic Nashville comparison we were just talking about. Do you know what the director of schools in Nashville is paid?
80?
285.
Oh, okay.
285, which I already
hold on. Okay.
I already had a problem with that in Nashville. I don't believe the director of a school system anywhere except maybe New York or LA should be paid anything above about
$250,000. Yeah, that's a little excessive.
But when you look at Nashville at 285 and Grand Rapids at 239, but a city 3 times smaller with a school system with a population that is way smaller, this blows my mind.
I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of jack off time. I don't know what to tell you.
What the fuck this job is.
Hold on. My camera is literally in front of that. I can't.
Oh. Sub admin. I don't know what the fuck that is. But 181. And then chief of staff? Really? The fact that job even fucking exists in a school system is small.
I would like to point these people to Lakeland County. And the reason I'd like to point them to Lakeland County is this. So Lakeland County, ironically for a conservative county, had an idea.
Where is this?
Right? It's the very northwest tip of Tennessee.
What the fuck is in Lakeland County?
Nothing. Absolutely fucking nothing.
Lakeland, Tennessee. Are you talking about Lakeland City in Shelby County, or is there a Lakeland?
There's a Lakeland County.
I don't know if
or it might be it.
There's a Lakeland, Tennessee.
It might be at the very edge of Shelby County. They
Yeah.
normally organize themselves. They normally refer to themselves as Lakeland County. So I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought they
Now
were
I'm
a county.
interested. There's a Lake County.
That might be it.
Oh yeah, that checks out. It's Lake County. You got Lake County confused with Lakeland City.
Yeah, there we go. So
And
Lake County.
It's apparently Lake County because Reelfoot Lake is.
Yeah. So
right
Lake
there.
County did this thing where Lake County said, okay, we have X number of people in our county.
Tiptonville.
We have X number of people in our county. We're just going to do this. They slammed all their schools into one campus. Right? If you've got an elementary school kid, we're going to run the buses, and all the buses deliver them to one place. If you have a high school age kid, we have buses. We're going to run the buses. We're going to put all your kids in one place. Everything is going to be in one place so that we can save money, right? They saved a metric shit ton of money by saying, we're just going to consolidate all our schools into one place. And the head of the schools is going to be paid a lot. And the deputy head of schools is going to be paid a lot. But it makes sense, right? Because there's only one school for the entire county.
Yeah. Right. It's a decent model.
This is not what they are paid.
Right. So I don't know what these executive directors are. I'd have to look these people up to see what little division of whatever the
again,
fuck
it also removed a lot of those secretaries, executive directors of anything. It's no, we just have one school. We have one giant campus. They're actually looking to put in a collegiate level kind of institution or a community college level institution on the same campus. They've been working on that for a while.
I don't know what these roles are, these executive directors. It's a lot, though. But here's what really gets me is the sheer volume of principals that are over $100,000.
Yeah.
That is astoundingly inappropriate to me.
Nope. Yeah.
You don't think this seems high?
No, it seems ridiculously high.
Okay.
For as many kids as they're I would ask because they make a point in Metro payrolls to be like Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so. At least those people have doctorates in education. I'm looking for doctor in any of these things.
Well, and I'm also a little bit perturbed that that the idea that doctor even matters for a principal. I mean,
it can.
At the end of the day, this shit is about teaching and educating.
At least it would justify the higher pay level if they were a doctor of something.
Here's our kid's principal. Now, there's obviously there's a pay scale here because these people all clock in at the same, and then somebody apparently has been here a minute longer than somebody else, and this person's been here 3 days longer than the next person, or whatever the fuck. They clearly have a plan. But the next thing I want to know is what in the titty fucking Jesus is a substitute principal? What is a substitute principal? And why in the flying spaghetti monster fuck are there so goddamn many of them? So that's the thing.
So wait, no, let me do the math. Hold on. Go scroll back up to substitute principal. So that's basically, let's call that 2 million or a 1.5 million. Yeah, that looks about right. 1.5 million in substitute principal salaries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15,
it's 2
16,
million.
17.
You're right. 2,070,000 ish.
2 million. All right. Yeah. 2 million.
So
$2 million in substitute principal salaries.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they are. I plan to ask. So you get down in here,
And then we have directors.
More directors. I don't know what the fuck they do.
What are they directors of?
Fucking, I don't know. Had to go look them up on LinkedIn. You keep digging through here.
Why do you have substitute principals and directors? Why can't the directors be?
I have no clue. This is a seriously top-heavy organization. But I even have a little. I know, a bunch of people are going to have a problem with me saying this kind of thing. But what in the fuck is going on when an elementary school teacher is making $83,000 a year?
That sounds. I'm not going to lie. That sounds about right.
How?
Do you want to manage 7-year-olds?
The only answer I can come up with, David, is that this person is old and they've been sitting still for a long time and they keep getting raises.
Also possible. On the other hand,
I'm not okay with that.
What?
I'm not okay with that. I really feel like civic jobs need to have to bring something new to the table to continue to get raises.
No, not in elementary school. Come on, dude. Like, no.
If you don't want to make entry-level money, get the fuck out of elementary school.
Oh, you have touched a sore point. Okay. Nope.
You know who I think deserves big money? These guys. These guys, I can pardon some big money.
So my mom had to go through a near doctorate program to get her early childhood education certificate for elementary school. And she only teaches, at the time, she was only teaching 5-year-olds.
Yeah, but whose fault is that? That's not her fault. That's the system being fucked.
Yeah, the system is fucked.
The
That's
system
fine.
grandly overestimating what is necessary.
Teacher who likely has multiple certifications that she had to get and has been there for a long time. And by the way, at a certain point, teaching a bunch of little kids all day long, 7 hours a day, every day, and then spending another 3 hours grading their papers, and oh, by the way, forking over a significant portion of your own personal income to make sure that they have, pens, paper, pencils, all the other things that they need.
Dude,
I feel like that. Dude. I feel like $80,000 is not out of the realm.
There's a boatload of people in this list that are just teaching one thing over and over again every year, sitting still, getting raises from a city apparatus. Well, in this case, it's not a city apparatus. It's its own fucking apparatus, which is another problem. They're making more money than I am.
Yep.
Makes no sense. Who are we competing with? They like to say that they're competing with the private sector to keep people from leaving. Who the fuck would leave an $80,000 job? When you tell me that teachers are trying to get by and they have to buy their own supplies, and that's not fair, but at $81,000 a year, you can afford to buy a lot of fucking supplies. You know how I know this?
Not as many as you think.
You know how I know this, David? Because that person's making more than me, and I buy a lot of Transformers. So, I mean, this is way out of whack as far as I'm concerned. I know Nashville's teachers are not making this kind of bank.
So my mom would regularly, I remember building a house set.
Also, why the fuck is a dean of students buried down here among the teacher salaries?
Yeah, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
This is all kinds of fucked up.
I also want to know what school renewal specialist is.
I just saw that. I just had the same thought. Yeah. And then right here, JROTC, this person better fucking be paid with a federal grant, because fuck you, Army, if you're making us pay for that.
Or Navy. Or Marines, or Air Force.
Army instructor. So
I can't. I like my camera's in the way. I'm not gonna lie.
You and your fancy pants camera. So let's go down here to the bottom, because that's something I'm very curious about. Usually, now here's the thing that they explained to me when they sent this to me. There are several little part-time extra duties that people can take on, and it's a separate paycheck, so it's listed as a separate line item with a separate amount. So we had to get out of that territory. These are probably part-time lunch supervisors and tutors. I don't know what a GSRP associate is. This is definitely a single individual full-time job, a paraprofessional. That's a weird word I hadn't encountered until I was here.
Which should be a much higher paid job.
So paraprofessional is basically their side door way of getting people that haven't gone through the education background process away into the school, I guess.
That wasn't what I was thinking, but okay.
It really makes no sense. Let's get up here into a little bit more of a standard kind of job that everybody understands. So these secretaries, that's worth looking at. That's dog shit. 30? Really?
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
You could get more than that in the private sector as a secretary.
Likely.
It's another way that it's out of whack. The security thing, like, tell me that you're only employing wannabe rent-a-cop flunkies without telling me. Pay them $30,000. Where they're directors, I don't know if you saw that lieutenant up there that was in the 90s.
So, most of the time when they're saying that, it's a moonlighting cop.
Oh, we have a lot of those, unfortunately. I mean, custodians that are, barely, if they're the only person with a full-time job in their household, they're barely getting anything.
Yeah.
And they do hard work. Like, it just blows my mind. And I really I gotta know, why do we have all these teachers down here in the 40s and we have some up here making twice the fuck what they make?
Because
these
new
discrepancies are entirely too huge for me. So
the problem is you don't have anything in the 60s.
Well, we haven't gotten there yet. We're in the 50s now. Like, the teachers run all the way up the scale from 40s to 80s. But it just fucking astonishes me how many of them are making like 80-something. Because now I'm thinking that there's a bunch of fucking fossils walking around here that can barely fucking move. I mean, if they've been there long enough to get up the scale to 80-something, how the fuck old are these people? I mean, Jesus Christ, we're making them use the internet to teach. Most of them were around when the telegraph was the new technology. Like, fuck.
Shots fired.
And I'm not at all saying somebody shouldn't be able to grow old and retire from their job. I'm saying they shouldn't be able to gain twice over their pay by sitting still.
Well, the problem is, I think you're loading the problem in the wrong place. Which is, it's not that the person at the top is being paid too much. It's that the person at the bottom is being paid too little.
That's true. But in order to get there, you have to trim out these people at the way top. You have to start asking the hard questions of what exactly
not necessarily,
are you doing?
I think at a certain point you need to start asking, what are you taxing your population, and what are you paying your entry-level teachers? Right? Are you paying them a wage that is livable and manageable, like, say, 50, 60,000?
Obviously
right?
not.
Exactly.
But you were talking about the 60s. Let's see what's in the 60s. It's mostly middle-of-the-road teachers. I'm actually, you know what? This is something that's different here. The South would be paying this fucking person $100,000. Like, the South would be falling all over themselves in any city south of Mason-Dixon line to pay this fucking person an unreasonable amount of money because sports.
Well, alumni donations is what they're after.
Yeah.
Like, if we pay them $40,000 more, then we'll gain and we have a good team, then maybe we'll gain $200K in alumni donations.
I mean, here's someone whose entire job title it consists of abbreviations.
I didn't
They're a
know.
pubs Azrek sergeant. So I think the assumption here, David, would be teacher with a subject is middle school or high school, and then teacher elementary is the generic elementary teacher.
You'd hope.
I don't know what the fuck a teacher consultant is or why they're even necessary, but there they are. I need to change views. There it is. Okay. We don't often do a screen share, especially not this long, so it takes a second. So help desk technician lead 67. Yeah, okay. At least if you're trying to compete with the private sector. PC technician. All right. 68. Okay. Why they're in the same ballpark as a dean of students? Who the fuck knows? Here are a couple of nurses. I guess that's okay. I don't know what nurse pay is like. 69 sounds about right, maybe. I don't know. So I really don't understand the salaries in this city in general. In the private sector, it's even been a little bit wacky. But I definitely don't
I didn't mean
understand
to cut that out again. But help desk technician, could you say that again, just real fast?
Yes. After I figure out where the fuck you left for a second and like,
yeah, I sorry,
you broke the universe.
I did break the universe. I apologize. Can you say that again?
Hold on, I'm gonna remove it. I'm gonna add it back.
68?
There it is. All right. What were you asking about? The help desk and stuff?
Yeah, 68.
There was a PC technician that was 69.
No. So PC technician, that was way over what it should be, bar none. Especially for your market.
There you go.
That's
Help desk technician
repulsively
lead,
over.
67.
Help desk technician lead. Do you know what that pays in the Nashville market? Just throw out a number.
I don't know. I honestly have no idea.
Throw out a number.
Remember, the only company I work for that had those people where I had an inside view was notoriously underpaying, as you well know. So,
yeah. So throw out a number.
I mean, I would expect most grab-ass companies to try to get away with hiring a help desk technician lead for less than 50.
About $45,000. So that's $20,000 over market in a major metropolitan market.
Maybe. I don't really know how that stuff shakes down up here. I could ask around.
That's pretty standard. $45,000 for desk technician lead. Metro Schools
coordinator. I don't know what the fuck that is, but they make 75.
Metro Schools starts at $55,000 to $60,000 a year for help desk lead, and that's if you have previous experience with another school system as help desk lead.
That makes sense.
So $67,000 for help desk lead sounds like, well, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Anyway, we're beating the dead horse at this point because they're just more of the same all the way up here. But it does frustrate me that there's such a spread, and there definitely has to be some level of seniority issue to it, because like if you look at this, and I don't know what schools a lot of these people are at, but here's a music teacher, 71, 70, 70, 69, 69. Right.
Sorry. It was right there.
It was too easy.
It really was.
I'm hoping to get to our band director at our school. There you go. Look at that. Now, she's about 3 years in. But still.
Eh.
Eh.
Is it a full on like 50-hour a week job?
This is a harder job than a regular teacher. This is all the classes, plus classes that are forced to meet at 7 a.m. before school's bell rings because the IB model does not include a slot for this kind of band. And then it's working for free on the weekends to go to band contests, working for free at night to go to football and basketball games. So, to me, this job is a bigger, harder job, but these music teachers are apparently subjected to the same bullshit ladder. Maybe they come in a little higher. Maybe they come in the 50s because they're doing all the extra stuff. But, like, I want to know what huge accomplishments these motherfuckers making 20 grand more than her have contributed to the system.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because
that is an excellent question.
I'm not aware of a trophy case loaded with first place fucking wins across the country at band contests in any school in the last 20 years in this city. And it's all out of whack. Anyway, it's an example to me of so many things. The fact that in a lot of cases, pay tends to apparently just be shit people just pull out of their ass, whether they're in the public or private sector. And we have this bullshit that I have never had a tolerance for of trying to compete with the private sector in public sector jobs. Back when Tennessee had its crisis of college budgeting in the TBR system, I was throwing a fit. Why are we cutting programs out of colleges in Tennessee when we pay university presidents $300 grand a year? And one of my friends and close collaborators on one of my side projects at the time, he said, well, they have to compete with the private sector to keep these people. And my answer was, no, fuck them. Let them leave. No. If they want to go be a CEO in the private sector, go be a CEO. Go make $300,000. Come to teach people. Come to make a difference in the future. Come be a president of a university or a principal of a school with the ethos of loving the idea of teaching knowledge to other humans so that the race is better in the long run. The human race benefits from your contribution for a cool 160 a year, maybe tops. Okay? Like competing with the private sector. And what I would say to a lot of people, especially in fucking education, oh, cupcake. Oh, okay. You need us to pay you more because you think you're worth more on the open market in the private sector. Good fucking luck translating the shit you picked up from the school system into a corporation that actually demands performance.
Kind of fair. That's kind of fair.
Especially
dirty, but kind of fair.
Especially administrators, especially university presidents. Like, come on. What the fuck skills did you bring to the table that translate to multi-million-dollar corporations? Fuck you. Good luck. That would be my answer. So, anyway, it's interesting to me how this stuff lines up. It's really sad sometimes to see it. It's going to be an interesting conversation to have when I start doing the compare and contrast exercise and asking some questions that nobody wants to hear because that's kind of what I do. David, I don't know what you just opened that made your face twist into the bizarre
that'd be
human
snake
Picasso handler that you just produced.
That'd be Good People Snake Handler, which I normally remembered as a kind of even-keeled IPA, but no, it turns out it's a double IPA, and it hurts my face.
Obviously.
Yes, it does. I'm just gonna try and march through that one.
You do
as best
that.
I can.
So we've come to the end of the road. It's been fun. It's been a nice wallow in the abysmal greed of our society on all fronts. If you were with us for the long haul, good on you. If you're just with us in and out, good on you. Oh, look at that. Last comment of the night from Andy.
IPAs hurt your face.
Best IPAs hurt your face. So anyway, it's going to be about that time. I got an episode of Picard I'm going to watch at the highest possible volume for
Nerd.
I know, right?
I'm so gonna do
Anyway.
the same thing.
It's always good to see you, sir. It's always good to see all of you out there. If you like what we do, share it with somebody. This is our hobby, our time to see each other. It's a great opportunity to talk about beer and what's going on in the world. And of course, it's a good time to unwind and be just like you would be at a table with some friends and some beers, telling the straight dope truth without any concern over your filtered language. So we hope that you've enjoyed that side of our personality.
By the way, for those of you who are wondering, yes, there is a warning on Facebook for language and smoking and drinking. Ignore that.
Well, it is the brand of the show.
Right?
So if somebody gets into the show and they're surprised by what they see and hear, then they're an idiot. They didn't review a damn thing. If you get past the logo and you don't know what's coming, you might need to go find yourself an $80,000 teacher to help you out. Anyway, we're at that point. We will bid you good night.
Good evening.
And
And
good luck.
good luck.